Like it, we're all just head bopping, doing it up. Welcome everybody to the Sunday show here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Sweet. I'm all right. I'm playing really bad chess lately. So like in the warm up to the show, I'll have like a chess game going, or maybe play a bunch of them because I only play Bullet. And then Arden will be working on an audio issue in the background, and all of a sudden she'll hear, "God damn it, I just did it again." I'll hang a queen and get all mad at myself.
I play chess with a friend of mine, and we do just the long term 1 day per turn games, and we'll have a game going on for like 3-4 days until I finally make a boneheaded move, and it just ruins the entire game. I'm like 4 days of playing, and then now I got to struggle recovering or just dying slowly and getting defeated. And yeah, I know that pain. Making that mistake and going, oh, why did I do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I play almost exclusively Bullet. I think I played between 3,000 and 4,000 games last year of Bullet.
Wow.
And I'm absolutely no better 1 year later than I was before. It's because I don't spend any time studying. But
yeah,
for those of you out there, this is the Sunday show on the line, and this is the show where we take calls primarily from theists, but we'll take calls on all sorts of issues. So theists are always going to have priority here. Do you believe in a God? Do you believe in something supernatural? Do you believe in, do you think we're wrong? Do you think that, the atheist, skeptic, secular, humanist community is just missed something obvious? Do you have the ability to tell us what you believe and why you believe it, and more importantly, why you think somebody else should believe it? Because if you're, by the way, saying, oh, I've had a personal experience with a God and that means it's justified for me, cool. But unless you think your personal experience justifies it for everybody else, that's not a call we can really engage on, other than to ask you, why you think it's convincing to you or why it's compelling to you. But I don't have the ability to experience what you've experienced. So what we're going to ask is that when you call in, and by the way, there's lines open. Theists will always have priority here. When you call in, maybe jot down some notes ahead of time of how you would define what it is that you believe. How would you describe God or, whatever supernatural thing you're doing? Just get a couple of features of it down and what you think is the most compelling reason to believe. It really is that simple. I mean, you could call in and say, hey, I believe in a God that's not quite what these other religions have, and I think it's just because I can't imagine there being nothing. And so since there has to be something and there has to be a reason for it, I mean, it doesn't matter. We'll figure out, is there a good argument? Is there a good reason for you to actually believe that? I have no idea. We'll have to take it on a case-by-case basis. We're hoping that people show up and do a good job. And lately, the last few weeks, it's like we've got rid of some of the riffraff, and we're getting callers that are, more, I don't know, more eager to just say, hey, here's what I believe. What do you think about it? And here's why I think you guys are wrong. And I can put it, into a package thing. So I'm cautiously optimistic about that. As a reminder, there is a special event tonight, and I'll get to it in just a second. So I'm basically leading in to Arden. You can support the Line Network in many different ways. You can subscribe to the YouTube. You can join as a member here. You can go to patreon.com/call the line. And all of those are ways that you can support. There's also linemerch.com. But if you're a patron, not only will you get a discount code, but tonight, after we're done with the Sunday show, and I think it's got a set time. Shannon Q will be doing a special meet and greet at 6 p.m. Central. So we're definitely going to be done by 6 p.m. for Shannon to take over. And we'll probably be done earlier than that so that Arden can get a break on this. But this is a patron exclusive Q&A. So if you've always had questions you wanted to ask Shannon, but you didn't want to interrupt one of the shows to do it, this is the chance. And it's a kind of Zoom hangout where patrons get to come in and ask questions, and Shannon will do her best to answer them. Or maybe she'll just get drunk and babble, and you guys can have a fun time where you play some game. I don't know what's planned for this, but in addition, you can go to linemerch.com, and if you're already a patron, there's a discount code in there where you can go to get those awesome hoodies or the new coffee mugs that are no longer part of the mug competition. Just call the line. You're on the line, t-shirts, stuff like that. We appreciate the support across the board for everybody. We have open lines, and huge thank you to Dragon for screening, and to Cookies and Critical Cupcake and Glacia and everybody else who's moderating, and Morgan I see there. Ooh, and I see Shannon Q saying probably even need sober, or even be sober. See, you're not even sober right now. You typoed need. But good stuff. Thanks everybody for showing up. We've got at least one caller already queued up. But Eric, do you have anything that's nagging at you, or that you wanted to let people know about what you're working on? I mean, I know we're playing a little PAL. I keep wanting to say PAL Talk, because PAL Talk used to be some kind of chat service thing once upon a time.
Yeah.
PAL World, we've been playing a little on the server, but what else you got going on?
Yeah, other than playing Pal World here and there, and also playing Factorio, I have my own channel, Skeptics and Scoundrels, where I do some pre-made content, and I'm also doing a weekly kind of apologetics response call-in thing. It's every Wednesday evening, starting at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I'm starting next Wednesday. Will be episode 5 of that. I started at the beginning of the year, and my goal is to do that once a night for the entire year. So that's a new project that's up and going for me. And as far as things that's like on my mind and been a concern, nothing too much. Kind of been more self-absorbed in my own life recently. Going back to work, and after vacation, and also just the channel activity. So yeah, that's all I got going.
Cool. Well, we have one caller that's ready to go that I'm going to go ahead and take. Lee in Michigan, I think it is an atheist, pronouncer he, him, who has questions for us about dealing with parents. So welcome, Lee. You're on with Eric and Matt.
Hi, Matt. Hey, Eric. Appreciate the time. Yeah, so I'm about 32 years old right now. I was about 14 when I realized that the stories of the Bible were not convincing to me. I kind of just kept that to myself, because my parents, they sincerely believe this stuff. So they think when I die, my soul will eternally burn in hell. And I see that as like an unbearable thing to actually believe, you know what I mean?
Well, unbearable to believe. It seems like.
Well, sorry.
No,
kind of nervous and muscle.
No, I'm just trying to make sure we understand and answer the question correctly.
I don't want my parents to think that I'm going to burn for eternity.
Nothing you can do about that.
Do your parents know that you're no longer a believer?
No.
No.
So
you say you're 32. You started questioning at 14, so you've lived for almost 20 years keeping it from your parents. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, so my mother and father are no longer together. My dad isn't so pushy with religion like my mom is. So it isn't brought up a whole lot, but it has been a lot recently with my mother, being that she's also like a QAnon conspiracy theorist and all this stuff. So it's either, Trump this or God that, with her. And it's just getting harder and harder, I feel like, for me to not say something, get her to think rationally, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So do you feel yourself experiencing a desire to kind of, I guess, out yourself to your parents, let them know kind of what your true state is, or is that something you want to keep to yourself? Like uh, aside from any of like the pressures you might be feeling or the conversations that your mom's been bringing up, like what at your core, kind of what do you want for yourself? Do you want to be out and open with your parents and deal with the consequences, or do you want to keep it in, preserve those relationships, or
Yeah.
deal with those consequences instead? Kind of what direction are you trying to, what direction would you like to move in if you had the freedom to?
I guess that's kind of what I've been struggling with. Is I'm not sure because of the consequences.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to be myself, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been watching a lot of debates lately. It's not something that I typically watched growing up, but like lately, I've been really enjoying a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing on the line, places like TikTok, stuff like that, and the arguments. They're so sound, and I just want to bring up some of these points that I hear. But when I do that, I know it's not going to go well,
Yeah.
So it's
Do you
just
have
this kind of fear that I
do you have a friend network? Like, do you have friends that are you can be open and out with, or are you kind of in a community where that's a dangerous thing to do, or do you have any other outlets, I guess, other than your parents and your family?
Well, my brother and I feel are in similar situations. I don't think he's like outed himself as a atheist. Um,
Yeah.
So we do talk mostly about my mom.
Okay.
But yeah, it does help.
Yeah. I ask these questions because I went through this similar experience. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and it's an isolationist kind of doomsday Christian religion. So anyone who outs themselves or leaves are branded as apostates. And if your family are, firm followers of the religion, they'll basically shun you and pretend like you don't exist. So I kind of face these same, questions and dilemmas and struggles when I deconverted 15 years ago. And it can be a difficult situation to be in because there's no real way to win. You either out yourself and deal with negative consequences, or you keep it to yourself, preserve relationships, but then you're dealing with the negative consequences of not being your genuine self, or having to hold your tongue during conversations, not be able to engage completely. There is no real clear way, easy way forward. It really just comes down to, what do you value more? At least that was the conclusions that I came to. What do I value more? Do I value these relationships, or do I value, being more genuine to myself? Do I value, and I was lucky too, in that, the friends that I accumulated after I deconverted, I was able to be out and open with. So I had that outlet. And it's a difficult situation to be in. Yeah, it's not. I guess, are you asking for advice, or are you trying to determine, hey, maybe what should I do, or are you just trying to vent? Like, what kind of, where are you at right now?
Yeah, I realize this isn't really an advice show, call in for advice show, but I figure anything you guys have would help me and maybe anybody watching or listening.
Yeah.
So
I think.
I'm sorry.
No, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
Did you feel when you were yourself in front of your parents? Did you feel better?
So I didn't. So I actually kept it to myself for years. And then by the time I was out with my dad had already gotten out on his own. So I had that kind of benefit. My mom went senile, and I can't communicate with her because she doesn't understand anything I'm saying. So I kind of lucked out. I didn't have to deal with making that choice. The choice was kind of made for me by circumstance as things went forward. But I had to wait like 10 years for that to occur. And it was a struggle during those 10 years to not, whenever I would talk to my dad about something, I wanted to express my real honest opinion about something, but I had to hold my tongue because, I didn't want to out myself. I didn't want him to isolate him. I didn't want to, maybe step on his deconversion process by all of a sudden saying, oh, I'm deconverted, I'm an apostate, listen to me, because that might close him up. It's a big, complicated, hairball that you got to kind of untangle. And I guess my whole point with that is that there's going to be probably no way forward where you can call it like this is 100% win. I'm going to get everything I want. Many scenarios in life are like that, where you have to make choices based off of what do you value more. And I can't make that choice for you. I can't tell you what I think you should do. All I can tell you is that this is a decision that once you make and once you act on, it's a permanent thing. So you need to really appreciate the consequences of whatever direction you take. Ensure to yourself that, hey, these are the things that I value and these are the things that I want over the things I want to lose. And do you bounce about like this? It's a good thing you're calling us and talking to us about this. You should seek out other like-minded people. And the internet's a vast place. You can find other communities and groups to talk to folks and to bounce things off of, and to just get a better idea and get some external opinions about, external perspectives on what you should do. If you ever want to, like, I know I don't want to bog down this show too much with, atheist self-help or communal help. But if you ever want to call into my show and talk to me on Wednesday nights, we can sit for an hour and just talk things through if you want. There's lots of other places you can go to get that support. So I'm sure there's people in the audience who would probably love to help you out. The best thing to do is, like I said, just take your time, examine your options, get very carefully, and when you make that choice, be sure you're going to be okay with the results because it'll be permanent. That's all I got.
When I was basically outed to my parents while I was trying to figure out the best way to do it. And it made things pretty difficult and strained, and the nature of our relationship has changed. I'm perhaps different from some people. I've had many conversations with my folks. I still love my folks. We still interact. Although I haven't seen my mom in person in several years. That was just primarily because of, COVID, and then the fact that they live quite a distance away and it's not always easy to get up and visit. But the bigger issue for me was when you're like, oh, did you feel better? I'm happy with my life and I'm happy being me. And I very quickly came to terms with the fact that anyone, whether they're blood relative, parents or not, anyone who doesn't want to know me and interact with me as me and respect me for who I actually am, I don't need them in my life. And that would include, parents and relatives and everything else. I get that a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And I'm not saying it's the best way to be or the right way to be. It is kind of do I have some need to actually be my authentic self around people, or am I okay faking it? And I'm not okay faking it. And at the end of the day, I've lost friends over it. Both I've lost atheist friends and theistic friends. There are family members that I don't talk to anymore. There's other family members that I talk to more than ever because they're similarly ostracized. And so it needs to be, for me, if I'm the guy in the family that when I show up and sit down, and hang out in the living room with everybody for Christmas, if there's less Jesus talk because I'm sitting there and people don't want to start a fight, I feel like I've already accomplished, at least a part of my goal. But if we can all get along and talk about, stuff I care about, stuff I don't care about, like I think the Chiefs game is on like right now. And I grew up in Kansas City. If they win, they're going to the Super Bowl. I haven't followed that much. I don't really care that much, but am I more likely to watch the Super Bowl when the team I was raised around is there? A little bit, even though I'm also the first one to say it's really silly for me to be like, oh, I support Kansas City because I was born there, when how many people on the team are from there? This regional football thing, it no longer makes any sense because everybody's from somewhere else. And yet I can have a conversation with family members about it and just be like, yeah, I don't care really that much, but it's kind of cool. And, I need some interaction with people, and I'd like it to be with people that I like who like me. There are plenty of people in and outside the atheist community and in and outside of my family who either really like me and want to engage or really hate me and don't want to engage. I just had to get comfortable with saying, you know what? If it turns out that some of the people I was closest to once upon a time, including relatives, I'm no longer close to, but my life is generally better, then I'm just going to have to deal with that. And there are things that make me sad and miserable. I had a little bit of a moment earlier today about something I'm not going to go into because it's not appropriate for the show, but something that happened a couple years ago, which still upsets me every time I think about it. And it's one of those things where I know that I have a problem when there's a lack of closure. If I'm really bad, like that's the only time I really get anxious is when there's an issue that I don't have resolution to, that it's like, I'm not going to go into detail because it'll tell some people what the best ways to do things are, but I'm working on getting better at that. And I realize that my parents probably would never change their mind. They'll go to their grave thinking that I'm going to hell, thinking I'm leading people to hell. And that makes me sad, but it's more sad about what they and their religion have done to their lives. And I had to make a conscious decision about how much I wanted that to impact my life.
I appreciate the advice, you guys.
Sure.
Yeah, no problem.
I hope it's been helpful. And by the way, I'd also recommend, in addition to what Eric was suggesting, there's recoveringfromreligion.org that you can reach out to. There are the Secular Therapy Project, also has counselors and stuff, ready to go. So yeah, you might consider those things. And I know there's a number of like Discord groups and stuff. It just depends on how you want to engage and what you think would be most useful for you.
Yeah. Lee, do you live in a populated area or do you live out country? What's your potential pool of friends that you can draw upon? Potential friends.
Excuse me. Sorry, I'm getting over COVID.
No worries.
I have most of my friends are not religious. I feel like most of the people that I engage with around my age are not very religious or just agnostic atheists as well.
Okay.
But I live near the capital, I should say.
Okay, great. So you can always there's like, it sounds like you already have a good pool of friends that you can rely upon, and maybe there's one or two friends in there that you can maybe lean on a little bit more. You can just straight up ask them, hey, I've been wanting to get something off my chest about this particular issue. Will you be willing to listen to me and let me bounce ideas off of you? And you can maybe find a friend or two that you can more heavily rely on. Or you can rely on other resources. Like if you're you mentioned near the Capitol, so you have potentially a large pool of people that you can draw upon that could potentially be like-minded. You can use certain websites like, I don't want to plug in here, like, I'll mention one like meetup.com. You can find yourself a local atheist group that there's lots of people undergoing the same struggles with, hey, what do I do? Do I out myself? Do I keep it to myself? Who can I trust? What are other people's experiences when it comes to either decision? You can probably find other people that perhaps are fresh perspectives, ones that you aren't already familiar with, and may have fresh new ideas that you may have not considered before because you just haven't been exposed to enough of them. So you can rely on strangers, honestly, but you got to, of course, be safe and do all the due diligence of making sure you join a group that's perhaps large enough and reputable and all that. But you have resources that might be at your disposal that you aren't currently utilizing, so you might want to look into some of those.
Right, that's good advice.
I don't envy you, but
yeah, I don't envy the position you're in. One of the bigger things is to recognize that you don't owe anybody an explanation for what you believe or why. You don't have to, defend yourself to anybody, including your parents. You get to decide whether maintaining a relationship to you is more or less important than, having a a relationship that's more tied to who you authentically are, and that you're not the only one going through this, and you don't have to go through it alone. So I appreciate you reaching out to us, even though, not really an advice show, but I'm glad that people find ways to connect with other people and get some benefits out of this. So I wish you well. And if you find better answers, by all means, not only can you call in and let us know, but recoveringfromreligion.org is always looking for volunteers to work their chat lines, hotlines, things like that. And if you find your way out, Lee, or anybody else who's watching, and find a better way to deal with this sort of conflict, that everybody gets to benefit from it when we're sharing. It's, I didn't start doing a show because I was like, oh, I know it all and now I need to tell everybody. It was, hey, I figured out that I didn't have good reasons for my belief, and neither did a bunch of other people. And as I began engaging with people, I found worse reasons, and I found more confusion, and I found more people who were, not, reasonably understanding how best to reach good conclusions. And so it was like, let me share what I've learned, and let me invite people to call and say, oh, no, you've got this part wrong. I have a bug in my room.
I wonder what you're batting at up there.
I tried with a rubber band to shoot it down, but
but yeah, good luck, Lee. I mean, like I said, just, we don't envy you. Lots of people go through this. You're not alone in this. Lots of people have gone through these struggles, and with a little bit of effort, you can probably find others who are in the same boat as you, and you can find a good support group. Yeah, that's what I encourage you to do.
All right. I really appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hope it gets better, and reach out if you have other questions or if you find better ways. All right. So we started off today with someone on our side of the issue who's struggling a lot. And that is, I think that one of the most important things is to realize that there's tons and tons and tons of people who are in those situations who, because of the way religions have permeated society, and there's a lot of just de facto assumption that everybody is religious of some type, or that most people are because most people are. And in trying to find your way in that, it can feel incredibly lonely. It's one of the reasons why a number of the organizations that I've worked with have been building actual meet space, get together communities and events to do stuff. We're going to be doing more of that here on the line, including LineCon. And also I was going to mention that it appears right now, we're waiting for the final confirmation, but it appears that March 2nd, which is a Saturday, is going to actually be the first episode when we kick off NBOSS. And a challenger is going to be coming in to defend the claim that Jesus bodily ascended to heaven. And so that's going to be the first hour of NBOSS material. For those who are unaware, NBOSS is a new debate style show that we're doing here at the line. And it is targeting 1 hour. So not 2 or 3 hours of debates and all this other stuff, 1 hour. And it's not two people necessarily presenting, diametrically opposed positions. Someone's going to come in as the challenger to face the end boss. Rawr. It's a bit of an inside joke because so many of my opponents just don't care about the actual subject, and just they're here to debate me as if I'm the end boss or the final boss in a game or whatever. I will not always be the end boss on the game. I will be on the premiere episode on March 2nd. But the format for an hour is there'll be a 5-minute of welcome, which is introduction to the end boss show, describe the format, introducing the challenger and the position they're defending. And then that challenger will get 10 minutes to present their case for the position they're defending. So we need to keep the positions relatively narrow and well-defined. And during that time, we'll start taking super chats and screening calls to be able to ask questions of that challenger. The challenger makes their position. Then there's a 5-minute period after their initial presentation where the end boss does their best to steelman the challenger's position in preparation for question. And what steelmanning is can I restate your position in a way that we can both agree is an accurate representation of it? And so it might be as simple as, okay, am I understanding you correctly that you think Jesus, a human being who was perhaps also divine in nature, was killed, resurrected, and then bodily ascended in front of witnesses into heaven? And if that's an accurate representation of the steel man, then the other aspect of what you would steel man would be, and you believe this because whatever their reason is. Once that's done, there's 20 minutes of questions that are selected and kind of curated by the end boss from super chats and calls, where you people get to question them. So you're kind of like the mob that they've got to make their way through, answering questions. And then after that's over, the challenger will face 10 minutes of direct questions from the end boss, to get, the end boss's kind of view on where we're at and where there's a potential gap, or how do you resolve this problem with your argument. And then after that's over, the challenger will get a 5-minute closing argument. That will be their final word. There will be no additional presentation regarding their position or anything else. Once they're done with their 5-minute last word, there's just 5 minutes of quick housekeeping wrap up of, hey, here's what's coming up on future challenges. Thank you guys for tuning in, etc. That's what we're going to see as planned for End Boss, and that's going to start March 2nd. So excited about that.
Yeah.
You can go to calltheline.com, and there'll be a link down below this video right now, but you can go down to you can email contact@qnaline.com, or you can go to qnaline.com, and there'll be a link there where you can apply to be on End Boss. All right, so we have next up is Diana. Pronouns are he, him, a theist who wants to share an experience he had about a personal revelation. So Diana, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Well, I do believe in God, but my belief in God changed a lot. I was raised Catholic, and just wasn't. I guess you would say I was indoctrinated in the Catholic faith, and I left the faith in 1982. That was the last. I stopped going to church after that. And really, after my high school experience, and I'm 60 years old, by the way, I wasn't really religious. And then I still had a sense or a belief in God, but it was based more on just, little observations that I would make, maybe ESP, if you will, not anything I could prove to anyone. I just would observe it. And so when I would pray, and sometimes I would have to pray because I had no one else to turn to in life. And so when I had no one to turn to, I would turn to God, and then things would happen. I mean, sometimes it would be due to my own volition and my own effort, but there were times I just thought to myself, no, there's no way I could have done this on my own. So, not to go through my whole life story, but in 2015, I woke up one morning with a depression I'd never experienced in my life. There was no cause, and I didn't know what's wrong with me. And I, started cleaning and my kitchen, trying to overcome this depression. And I found a picture that a man who made an effort in my life to be a savior, a real savior, when I needed someone to step into my life, he gave me a picture. And that was the last time I saw him. It was in 1982. And I found the picture that morning, and I didn't remember why he gave it to me. And I couldn't remember any relationship with him or anything. And I just put the picture away. I just had this depression. I put it away and said a prayer. And I felt I said, what's wrong with me, God? Why can't you lift this depression? And I felt the Spirit join me. I felt it. It was real. And the depression lifted because I was kind of spooked. And I went about my day cleaning, or I went to the gym after that. I was a little scared to be in this house. And I just couldn't stop thinking about him. And I kept looking at the picture that I had not seen I just had it stashed away in a canister set. And 2 weeks later, I just knew he died. I told my husband about it, and I said, I think he died. I know he did. And I Googled his name. I found his obituary. I looked at the date I had circled, and he died on that day. And I said, oh my God, that's the weirdest thing I'd ever experienced. And my husband, now he's kind of agnostic, we met in we've been together since college. So 1988 was when I met him. And
I'm confused at what
I'd
any of
never
this
mentioned
demonstrates. I'm confused at what any of this
Okay.
demonstrates.
Well, I believe he, so after that, after I confirmed it, I had these memories coming back and of a relationship that I completely forgot. And one of those memories was a conversation where he told me he was God. Now, this was in about 3 months after. Okay. So go ahead and ask questions.
So prior to 1982, you were Catholic, and back then you knew a man who told you he was God, and then you didn't have any contact with that person at all for many, many years. And then you found a picture, but you didn't remember the relationship with the person who told you he was God. And then you just knew he was dead without any justification at
Okay.
all.
Okay. Let me take a step back. He was my best friend's older brother.
Wait,
so he was.
How could Diana?
So
How
I
could you
did know
forget?
him.
Diana, how could you forget your best friend's older brother who told you he was God? How could you forget that?
I could, and I've done that before. It is
Okay.
possible to repress a memory. If you don't believe that is true,
No, Diana, I understand
go
it's
ahead.
possible to repress. Jesus Christ. I understand it's possible to repress a memory, but you didn't say that you repressed a memory, because repressing memories tends to be some sort of act in like defense against trauma or whatever
Okay.
else. Well,
Okay. So
hang on.
go ahead.
Thank you. What does any
Uh-huh.
of this demonstrate?
Well, for me, at least in my belief,
No,
I
Diana,
do believe.
I'm not asking
No.
what it
So
demonstrates to you. Okay. You can think
okay. So what
whatever
does
you
it
can.
demonstrate to you?
Yes. How on earth does any of this demonstrate that your conclusions are real about whether or not this guy said he was God, and now aren't you convinced you're a Messiah?
Yes,
A Messiah or
but
the
I don't
Messiah?
know. Well, I'm not Jesus Christ.
I didn't ask that.
Okay. So I am a
I'm
Messiah
asking
by the
you.
definition. Yes.
I'm asking you if you're a Messiah or the Messiah, and what that means, and how do you know?
He told me I was his. He convinced me he was God. In this out of body conversation that seemed to take place in 1981. Like
Wait,
I said, I remember. Okay,
Diana, wait.
go ahead.
I'm I apologize.
I know.
I wouldn't be interrupting if this wasn't the most scattered thing I've ever heard. I'm trying to get clarification on something, and you keep going to something
Go
else.
ahead.
So, and you
Okay,
had an
ask me.
out-of-body conversation with him in 1981 where he said he was God and you were his Messiah?
That's the way the memory seemed to come back when it would have been in 2015. So these memories started coming back right after I sensed his death. I confirmed it. I don't. So
Confirmed what?
maybe about his death. I confirmed it by Googling
Okay.
his name and finding his obituary.
So what do you mean you had an out-of-body conversation with him in 1981?
Well, I had a conversation with him, which was when he gave me this wallet-sized picture. That's the only.
That's not an out-of-body conversation. Why did you call it an out-of-body conversation?
Well, I don't. It's just the way it seemed to take place. It didn't seem like I was when these memories came back. There was a two-part conversation. The first part of the conversation, when he gave me his picture, he was something I remembered, and I remembered remembering it for about 5 years. And then there was a second part of the conversation that I didn't remember. And this part of the conversation came back probably in 2015 or 16. And the things that he was telling me in this conversation were just more like predictions about how I would be a Messiah.
Well, give me one. Give me one prediction about how you would be a Messiah that has come true that we can verify.
Okay, just one. He made a prediction where I would I would meet a woman. Her name was Amy, and she's diagnosed with brain cancer, and he said that's where I would be her spiritual Messiah, and she was a Christian, and he said something about me. I can't remember everything he said about it, but he said that I would be her friend at her last.
Why is it that a Messiah getting messages from God can't remember the details?
Well, okay. Do you want another time where I was a Messiah?
No, I want this one to actually make sense. When somebody makes a prophecy, they said you would meet a woman? Did they say that this? Stop interrupting me.
Right.
They said that you would meet a woman. Did they say that this woman's name would be Amy? And that would you stop fucking interrupting me and let me ask my question?
Go ahead.
I'm going to mute you if you don't stop it. Here we go. Stop talking. Stop talking. I'm asking the question. Did this God person tell you, Diana, you will meet a woman named Amy who will be diagnosed with cancer and you will be her spiritual Messiah? Is that what the God person said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you know that you were her spiritual Messiah? Because if she's a Christian, her Messiah is Jesus and you're not Jesus.
Yeah, you're correct.
I know.
She was having doubt when she was only 33 years old when she was diagnosed with cancer.
Doesn't make you a Messiah.
The caller that you just took, I was listening to him. He's an atheist and he is very much alone, right?
Okay, now you're muted. The last call has nothing to do with this. When I point out flaws in what you say that are either logical fallacies or you misunderstanding or you lying, you don't get to go and talk about some other call. Let's stay with this call. How are you this cancer patient's Messiah if she's a Christian and you're not Christ? How are you her Messiah?
She needed a friend. So when I say I'm God's Messiah, and she's saying a prayer to God, and no one's answering her prayer, including her husband, who is a radiologist.
Diana, I'm going to pause you again. Now you seem to be saying that you weren't her Messiah, but you were her friend, and she needed a friend, and nobody was answering her prayer. What is your definition of Messiah?
A Messiah is a savior and a leader of a cause.
Okay. You said she needed a friend. What did you do for her? Did you cure her cancer?
No.
What did you do that was a savior for her?
Well, I mean, a spiritual savior. She needed.
I don't even know what spiritual means, let alone spiritual savior.
Can you just listen to me?
Okay, I'm going to mute you again, Diana. I warned you when you came at me on Twitter that this was not going to go well for you because you couldn't put together a coherent sentence on Twitter. And I told you it would be bad for you to call in if you hadn't taken notes and written this down. For the people in chat who think that I'm being short, Diana and I have already partially had this conversation. I'm asking the specific questions to try to get to the foundation of his story. That's all I want to do. And every time I point something out, you seem to have some sort of excuse, or you went, well, just let me finish. I'm going to interrupt to ask questions for clarity. If you don't like that, you should not have called, but it's not my fault that you are not capable so far of being clear. So when I say, how were you her Messiah? I'd like an answer to how you were her Messiah.
Let me just say, Amy was a Christian and she was having doubts, right? How would you feel if you were diagnosed with cancer and you knew you didn't have long to live and you believed in God and you wanted to have that afterlife? Wouldn't you want someone to at least confirm that God was real right before you died?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't.
If that's in your case, that is in your case. That
correct.
Wasn't in her case.
Correct, Diana.
That wasn't
but
in,
correct,
okay, so
Diana.
in her case,
correct,
I wasn't
Diana.
your Messiah.
How did you confirm that God existed? How did you confirm for Amy that God existed?
You know what? Maybe I shouldn't tell you. Maybe we should just go with something that's more literally.
Maybe you shouldn't tell me. Maybe you shouldn't tell me? Diana, you called this show to claim that you are a Messiah who got a message from God. And now you're avoiding doing the very thing that you called in to do. How much longer do you think I'm going to let you stay on the show with you saying you're not going to give me the answer to the questions of the things that you
give you the answer, but you know what? Here, do you want me to?
I would like for you to be honest and actually answer the. Okay, I'm going to mute you again. Here's all I want from you, Diana. Be honest and answer the questions. Make your case for what you actually believe. That's what we want. That's why we're asking questions.
Okay,
go ahead.
Can I speak for a few seconds?
Didn't you speak for the entire beginning of the call? Here, let me try this one more time, Diana. I'm going to mute you. If every time I unmute you, all you do is whine about how I haven't let you speak, when I have a recording of the entire call where we listened to all of your backstory that got us nowhere and contained nothing of substance, you're going to look foolish. So I'm going to unmute you one more time, and you can then continue to make your case. But if you whine about the fact that I asked clarifying questions after warning you to have your fucking A game prepared before you called, I'm going to make you look bad. So
you did. What you did
continue.
What you did is you asked a very broad question that is an opinion. Now, if someone if she believed that I was her Messiah, because I proved, or at least I had the confidence that God was real and that he spoke to me and that he mentioned her name. Now, she wanted to know, how did he mention her name in 1981, and why did she come up in conversation, and how could I be sure? And I told her that when I was talking to a man named Patrick, I was reading a book at that point, not the Bible, but a Barbara Cartland book. And the Barbara Cartland book, it was just a simple romantic book that my mother suggested I read. And it was about a woman named Amy. And her name, I asked Patrick, how did she spell her name? Because he was describing someone exactly in the book I was reading at the time in 1981. Now, I said, I was sure because I Googled, I didn't even remember Barbara Cartland's last name. I remembered Barbara, but I didn't remember her last name. So when I Googled it, I found, just a few things that just seemed kind of weird. And guess what? She wrote 720 books.
Okay,
Hey,
I'm
Diana.
muting you again, Diana, because I'm already bald, so I don't have any hair to pull out. I know Eric will probably have questions as well. I'm going to unmute you. I would love it if you could get to some sort of point to demonstrate anything at all relevant to your claims or the point of this show. I don't need to hear about an author and how an author wrote 700 books or how you couldn't even remember their name. The shit that you don't remember is irrelevant. Make the case for there being a God and you being a Messiah, or drop it. One of the two.
Okay.
Make the case or drop it.
Okay. Out of 720 books, I found one book where Barbara Cartland, it took me a few years, where the main character was Amy, A-M-E, and she died. This was the only Barbara Cartland book where Amy died.
Why does that matter?
It matters because I told Amy that God remembered her, and he mentioned her name, so don't
How do you know
worry.
God remembered
That's
Amy?
all.
Why did you lie to Amy? Why did you lie to Amy? You lied to Amy.
I didn't lie to her.
You told
What do you mean?
you told Amy that God remembered her, didn't you?
Yes.
How do you know whether God remembered Amy or not?
I'm confident of it.
I don't give a shit if you're confident. I asked how you knew.
It doesn't matter. Hey, it doesn't matter. Hey,
it does matter. If you don't have a way
to and that's all that matters.
You're a fucking liar.
Okay, here's the thing. We can argue.
Here's the thing. I'm muting you again. Listen very carefully. Nobody's going to hear you speak until I unmute you. If you know that God did not forget Amy, then you need to explain how you knew that. Otherwise, you're just making a claim that you're not defending. The whole purpose of a call-in show like this is for you to defend your claim. Meanwhile, any dipshit could tell Amy that God hasn't forgotten her. Only way it makes any difference to this story is if it's actually true. So when I say, how did you know? And you say it doesn't matter, why should anybody listen to another word you say, you liar?
I'm not lying.
You are lying.
I'm not lying.
You're a liar.
Hey, Deanna, I'd like to ask you, Deanna, this is Eric. I'd like to ask a few questions here. You've been on here for 20 minutes now. You've dropped a lot of details on us, a lot of detailed history, a lot of claims. After that 20 minutes, we were talking about steel manning earlier, basically representing your interlocutor in an honest way. Let me ask you this. What do you think is our hang up after hearing all of this? What do you think is our hang up? What is preventing us from believing your stories? What do you think that might be?
I would say it's religious authority. And just,
religious authority? No. Let let me rephrase my question. Matt and I don't believe what you're telling us. We're not calling you a liar. I think you're okay. Matt is. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and I'll simply say I think that. No, hold on. Please listen. I think that you're conveying to me with honesty. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You could be lying to us, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you aren't, because I haven't interacted with you before like Matt has. What do you think is my hang-up?
I'm not saying he's lying to us. I'm saying he lied to Amy.
Oh, okay. Lied to Amy. Okay.
Do you think
so, Deanna.
How would you?
Deanna.
Would you be willing to confirm it?
Deanna. Let's focus on my question here, okay? What do you think is our hang-up with these stories? Why aren't we accepting these stories as some type of evidence for your God?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
Okay. Because let me illustrate it to you this way, okay? In summary, this is poor evidence because this is just all anecdotes. This is all stories. It is very confused and convoluted. Let's flip the script here, okay? Let's say somebody came to you, a stranger.
Aren't really telling me specifically where you asked you.
Deanna, let's flip the script here, okay? Let's say, Deanna, you're just out one day doing some shopping. A stranger comes up to you and starts telling you a story. All right. They tell you a story about how one day they felt depressed. One day they were so depressed, they got to cleaning their kitchen and they found a picture of somebody they knew. And that picture gave them hope and cheered them up. And then they prayed to Xenu, the god of Scientology. And at the end of the day, they felt so much better. And now that's evidence that Xenu exists. And when you ask that person, hey, can you give me some details? They start adding on more and more claims and more of the story. What would that do for you? Would more claims and more story increase your confidence that Xenu exists?
If that's what you would want to call them, yeah.
No, I'm asking you.
I wouldn't want to. Well, I don't really feel.
Let's try it this way, okay? If somebody came up to you and gave you just the base form of the story, and then attributed them feeling better to Xenu, what would be your confidence level that Xenu exists from 0 to 100?
It would be very low.
Be very low. Okay. What if they added on some more embellishments? Oh, well, this picture was of this older brother of a friend that I once knew, and there was a death at that time, and we felt comforted with each other. If they added on those additional parts of the story, would that raise or lower your confidence?
It would. If they expected me to just believe it based on their word, I would say, okay, I don't believe you. Would more embellishments to the story raise or lower your confidence? It depends.
Or keep it the same?
It would depend if their embellishment could be verified.
Okay, let's say the embellishments are all verified. There actually was an older brother. There actually was a photo. This person was actually depressed and felt better at the end of the day. Let's say all of those things actually could be verified and actually happened. Would that raise or lower your confidence in Xenu?
Still, I would want to know why Xenu.
Would it raise or lower your confidence in Xenu?
It would. Would it matter?
I think it does because you do you understand why I'm do you understand why I'm asking these questions? I'm trying to make you understand what it looks like from our perspective and why we reject your claims.
Right. Well.
Okay. So would it raise? I'll ask you one more time. Would adding embellishments to the story, making it more spectacular, adding more people, pinpointing dates, adding a story of 700 books, and one of the books had this name in it, and this character in this book died, and that's what happened to that friend in real life. I could add all what you just added to the Xenu story. Would it raise or lower your confidence in Xenu?
If we said this, let's say you're the one. You're in my position, right? And you experienced all this.
Deanna, I'm sorry. I'm gonna really be a stickler for this. I'll even simplify the question. Yes or no? Would it raise your confidence in Xenu? Yes or no?
I would say at this point, with the questions that you have asked me and what I have told you, I would say no.
Okay.
I have not.
So hold on to that. Hold on to that right now. Hold on to that revelation right now. That's exactly the position me and Matt are in right now. Because I just took exactly what you threw at us, and I just simply replaced the God with Xenu. And you say, well, I'm not going to believe in Xenu. Why does the standard work for your God and not for Xenu?
Hold on. I didn't say that.
You just said no, it would not raise your confidence.
Well, I said I still believe in God. I don't care what I call it. You call God. You can call God what you knew.
Deanna, I'm trying to make you understand what our objections are. Deanna, I'm trying to make you understand what our objections are to this line of reasoning, for lack of a better term. All we had to do was take your reasoning, your story, and replace the God. And for some reason, that doesn't work for you. You would not increase your confidence in that Xenu exists based off of your story. And you're expecting us to raise our confidence in a Jehovah or a Yahweh or a Christian God based off of your story.
Right now, here's what you are. Let's say we just replace the God, and we're going to go with Don. Okay, we'll just change it to Don.
Okay.
Or Donald. Would you believe if Donald had the same exact characteristic of my God, everything, but he had a different name. He looked different. He had the same spiritual characteristics. I would say, yes, I recognize him as God. He might have a different name. He might have a different body.
Why?
Or a different form.
Why is the name? Why does changing the name from Xenu to Dawn make any difference?
Well, that's the same thing. Why does Patrick or Xenu, are they one and the same? Are they different?
I can add in whatever characteristics to this God that you want, because we can do this ad nauseum all day. I can just one for one match your God and your characteristics.
That's what you're doing. You're saying that this God Xenu or the leprechaun or the flying spaghetti monster, there are three different gods, right? That's what you're saying.
Okay. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't believe any of these things exist. I don't. So let me just. This is my position. I don't think any of these gods exist, including Yahweh, because of bad evidence.
Okay.
All right. So you're calling in with you're calling in and trying to present these stories as evidence that your God exists. All right. And what I'm saying is that I would not accept these stories, and neither would you by your own admission. You would not accept these stories as evidence that a Xenu exists. So if you understand that, you'll understand why I don't accept these stories for why Yahweh exists.
Okay, but here's the thing. I'm not familiar with Xenu. You're just throwing a name out and asking if I would believe in him.
Xenu is the god of Scientology. I'm not throwing it out there. Okay. There are people who believe in Xenu. There is written works that support the existence of Xenu. There's a whole religion based around this called Scientology. I reject that as much as I reject Christianity. And you do too. You reject Scientology. You reject Christianity. I'm sorry, you reject Scientology. But by those same standards, you're accepting Christianity.
Wait, what did you say? I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Sorry. The whole point of this is, I see you exercising two different standards.
Do I accept or reject Christianity?
Sorry, I misspoke earlier. I know you accept Christianity, but you reject Scientology.
No, wait.
Oh, did I mischaracterize you?
No, I wouldn't really call myself a Christian by most people's standards.
You believe in Jesus?
I believe in following the golden rule. I don't believe in following every single rule Christians have. So,
all right, let's drop the Christianity thing. All right. All I'm trying to illustrate to you is, I'm trying to make you understand why we're rejecting your claims as evidence for your God. For the same reasons you rejected that same evidence as evidence of Xenu, for Xenu's existence, we're doing the same thing with your God.
Okay, so what you're saying, would you research my claims to see if I'm telling a lie?
How can I research your claims? How can I research the 1982 photo? How can I research that you knew an older brother? How can I research that you were depressed that day? I can't research any of that.
Hold on. I'll give you, if you call my brother, He is a Harvard-educated psychiatrist. His name is.
Can a Harvard-educated?
No.
Can a Harvard-educated
names or contact information, and we're not calling your brother.
No.
Okay.
So, Deanna, let's say, Deanna, let's just say for a moment I could get a hold of your brother. I don't want to. I don't want his information. Don't dox him here. But let's say I could get a hold of your brother, a college-educated. You mentioned a PhD or something. Could he have false memories about an event?
Who?
Your brother.
Could I or my brother? No,
the same question applies.
My
he can't have false memories? He can't mistakenly remember something?
Yeah, he could have false memories and he could repress memories.
Okay.
But I think he does remember that I called him in.
So how does me calling him help me verify any of the aspects of your story?
Well, first of all, Matt believes I have lied to Amy.
I asked you a question, Deanna. Let's not talk about Matt. I asked you a question.
You again. I'm going to only interject for just a second. My position is that if you can't demonstrate that how you know that God didn't forget about Amy, then when you tell Amy that God hasn't forgotten about her, you are lying to Amy. That's it. That's the only thing that I was talking about, lies. But you don't need to bring me up at all. Just stick with whatever you and Eric are discussing and forget that I was ever here.
So here's the... Hello? Hello?
Yep. We hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So my point is that I found it profound that I remembered this conversation with Patrick, who told me he was God, and he brought up Amy. And he told me a little bit about her and what I would be doing in the future. And that's what I remembered, and that's what I told her. And I said,
how does...
and she was doubtful too. And
Deanna, how does you finding this profound and you convincing somebody else help convince me?
Hang on. I got to interrupt one more time. And
sure.
I'm just doing this really quick. Everybody in chat, listen to me very fucking carefully. The caller's pronouns are he, him. I understand people making mistakes. Mistakes happen, but you've been told about 9 billion fucking times now. So knock it the fuck off, or I'm going to start long-term timing people out. There we go. Now back to your discussion. My apologies.
Wait, why did you have to bring up my pronouns?
Because people in chat are misgendering you.
Yeah. Matt was defending you, Deanna.
Who's the gender? I chose the gender. I told you he and him.
Yeah. Matt was defending you.
I'm telling chat that your preferred pronouns are he and him, and that they need to use those.
Okay.
Yeah. Matt was doing something nice for you, Deanna. So
I have an old new thing.
So all right, so Deanna, let's just cut to the end here, because this call's gone on for a while now. You're giving us a lot of anecdotal evidence, a lot of stories, a lot of recollection. All right, from literally decades ago. Okay, the most recent date you dropped was 2015, which is 9 years ago, and you dropped 1981, 1982, which is over 40 years ago. All right, you're dropping us stories and anecdotes, and you're drawing all these connections between how I was feeling to this date, the words I read in this book, the names that I associated them with people in my life, events that occurred. Right. So you're spinning us this elaborate story. All right. And my whole line of questioning was, hold on. My whole line of questioning was, why would this story not convince you about Xenu? And if you understand that you'll understand then why the story doesn't convince me about the God that you're pushing. Okay.
You brought up he and him, the pronouns, right? Let me.
We're past Deanna. We're past that. Answer my question, please. Okay. I'm begging you.
What about abortion? How do you feel about abortion?
No.
No.
I've now muted you. Nobody can hear you, Diana. I am this close to fucking nuking this entire conversation. Stay on topic. have a good conversation with Eric, stop deflecting to other things, or I will ban you from the show because I've had enough incoherence for today. You are not equipped to be having a defense of God, in my opinion, but I want to see if you can actually do it. Demonstrate that Patrick, whoever he was actually God, and then explain how God died, but stop switching topics. We are not going into a discussion about abortion, period. Mention abortion again, and the call is over. Is that clear?
Eric.
Yes.
Are you Eric?
I'm Eric.
Why was
yes.
that? Okay, hold on. Why was that topic?
Don't you fucking tell me to hold on, Diana. Let me explain to you how this works. You're either going to agree to the conditions of this call in order to keep talking, or we will be done with you. So what I said was, don't bring up abortion again. Is that clear?
What?
Yes or no?
Okay, it's clear. Now, could you just explain to me why? You brought up
no. I'm not going to take time. I'm not going to take any more fucking time out of this show to explain to you how a fucking show works.
Okay.
Answer Eric's question or go the fuck away.
Hold on, Eric, please.
I'm
Eric,
Matt.
Are you there?
I'm Matt,
okay.
and you can stop telling me to hold on. I'm the head motherfucker in charge right now.
Okay, and you are. All you're doing is talking over me. Now,
no, that's a lie. That is a blatant fucking lie. You blatant fucking liar, as I have sat here and let you blather on for ages, you fucking liar.
You want to know a secret? You want to know a secret about pronouns?
Here, there's a secret about pronouns. You are no longer on the show, sir. There's the secret.
Yeah. Man, Deanna, reflect back on that call. Ask yourself why you wanted a sudden topic change once we finally pinned you on the double standards you're exercising. Ask yourself, why did I do that? Why was that important that I suddenly switched the topic and get off of that? I suspect, if I got through to you, I suspect you're experiencing something called cognitive dissonance. You realize you have double standards based on your preferences. You prefer one God over a different God, and you're applying standards differently to both. And I'm hoping that you realize that was the case, and that's what made you want to suddenly change the topic, because cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable. I've experienced it myself. But if you want some value from that call, embrace that feeling. Say, wow, I just had something pointed out to me that I need to address, and then go and address it. And do that on your own time. You don't have to do it live in front of people, in front of an audience. Take that away, think about it, and ask yourself, how can I resolve that cognitive dissonance? If that's in fact what you're feeling. If you do, good luck. Best of wishes.
This was a conversation
that
started on Twitter. And I gave him every possible advanced warning. Hang on. And let him tell the entire story from the beginning. Waited until a certain amount of time had gone by where we had no content. And it's like, okay, what's the point? So the way I understand his story is that prior to 1982, he was Catholic, and that he knew someone who was the brother of a friend who claimed to be God. And at some point, he read a book by Barbara What's-Her-Face that had Amy as a main character. And Patrick God told Diana that at some point he would be a messiah for someone named Amy who has cancer. Now, I could grant absolutely everything. Like, I don't know that there's anything that Diana said that we couldn't grant, because I'm happy to believe that you had a friend And I'm happy to believe that friend had a brother. I'm happy to believe that friend's brother was named Patrick. I'm happy to believe that Patrick claimed to be God. But Patrick claiming to be God isn't in any way a demonstration that Patrick is God. There needs to be some other sort of evidence for Patrick to actually be, for anybody to have a warranted belief that Patrick was God. That you read a book, one of 700 books by some author, and it had a main character, Amy, is cool, but doesn't prove anything at all. The fact that you were kind to someone who was suffering with cancer when they needed a friend is great. It's wonderful, but that doesn't mean that you're a Messiah in the traditional religious sense. You know, are we all messiahs every time we're a friend to somebody in need? If so, okay, now you've changed the meaning of that term to where it's pretty much useless. But none of this gets to, is there a God? Was Patrick a God? Are you, Diana, a messiah? Are you the representative of God? And the fact that you can't make a cogent argument, that you wander all over the place, that you want to change topics when, I don't know, maybe it gets uncomfortable, whatever. Eric was the most patient person I could imagine in attempting, you know, the basics of street epistemology to try to get you to realize stuff. But it's all we wanted was for you to say, hey, this is what I believe and why. And it was difficult to get any definition of what it is that you believe, which is why Eric was like, well, you're accepting Christianity when maybe you're not. I told you when we were on Twitter, when you could not answer a single question on Twitter, that this was not going to go well for you and that you should not call the show because you don't seem to know how these shows work. And you don't even seem to know what it is that you believe or why you believe it. You have to do that part. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten alive. And it's not because we're sitting here desperately just trying to talk over you or shut you down. It's because there's thousands of people watching. We're trying to actually educate people, and you aren't able to put together a thought that makes sense, that warrants belief. And you might be right. You could be absolutely right about all of it. You could be right that Patrick is God and that you're a Messiah, and you will have done absolutely nothing to demonstrate that it's true. In fact, everything that you did is more likely to make people who are watching this dismiss everything that you said. Because if something sounds ridiculous or incoherent, people can't just, oh, well, I guess that must be true. And that's why, to some extent, when Eric was asking you about, does this raise your confidence level? We were all sitting here going, please say no, please say no, please say no. And then you did. And then you kind of flipped a little bit after that.
Yep.
And
for a brief moment, I thought we made some progress.
Yeah. And it's, yeah. I think that you did really good in, in asking the right questions and directing Diana, but it's at some point, whether it happened prior to the call or prior to you engaging, there was a disconnect on what the hell he was saying. And yeah, until it's clear, what are we supposed to do with it?
Yeah, his story was convoluted, and adding more and more detail doesn't help the matter at all. Brevity is a soul of wit. If you want to try to convince somebody based off of an anecdote, you need to keep it simple and to the point. And when somebody asks you, why should this convince me? Adding more claims doesn't help. You need to lay out the logical links. This leads to this, and this leads to this, and therefore this. More claims, more detail doesn't help. Or more connections with books and names and people I used to know and such. That doesn't get you closer to answering the question of why should I believe this?
Yeah.
And if
why was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's frustrating because I suspect that I could have phrased things in a way to give him the why. So for example, if I'm putting on do my best to represent Diana as charitably as possible, I could pretend that I believe what Diana believes by saying, okay, I'm convinced that Patrick was God because his words had an impact on me, and I don't see how Patrick could have known the very things that came true later. And, I was expecting something like that, because at least to that, I can say, but you haven't demonstrated that Patrick knew anything. You're connecting two things. You're saying because somebody said something before something else happened, you can then connect those. Oh, they're about the same person. But you can't show that Patrick knew anything, especially it's bizarre to me that I would have someone who's my best friend's brother tell me that they're a god and have an important message about what I'm going to do in the future. And then I just forget the person and the relationship entirely. I get it. From 81 to 2015 is a long time, and who knows what I've forgotten people I've worked with on shows. It's just a fact. But at the time when memories start coming back, it's bizarre to me what kind of God we're describing. One of the big questions that I'm going to try to get to every time is the things you believe have consequences on the world. If Patrick was God, how did Patrick die? Can God die? Evidently. I mean, that would have been a good question. If Patrick was God, why did he die? What's God doing handing out wallet-sized photos and telling people things about their future and then dying? I mean, things about the story just don't make any sense given the world we're in. They have consequences on the world. But all right, well, that
I'm glad
didn't go as well as I thought.
I'm glad you mentioned that you had interacted with him on Twitter beforehand, because you were filling in details that I didn't hear, and I was like, did I not hear that?
Yeah.
Is Matt not hearing correctly, or does Matt have clairvoyance? And then all of a sudden it was, Twitter. Okay. That's why you get details.
Yeah, I wasn't sure when he started talking that I was talking about the same person, in part because of the pronoun issue, because that didn't exist on Twitter.
Yeah.
But, I tried to have a conversation there, and it was, really close to gobbledygook. And I was like, okay,
I believe it. Yeah.
You need to write down what it is you believe and why. This, I promise you, this is, not going to go well. And they were, he was talking about calling into the show, and I'm not, at no point, am I an asshole on occasion? You bet. Yeah, undeniable. Was I eventually an asshole to Diana? Yeah. And okay, I will take that hit. However, we tried to avoid this repeatedly, and tried with mute, and tried. I just sat here and let Eric go to town. Yeah, if you're then going to say that all I'm doing is talking over you after I've sat here and only interrupted in order to chastise chat on your behalf, I don't know what to do at that point. But anyway, we got other callers. Maybe they'll go all better.
All right.
So Jonesy in the UK is calling to say that I'm still saved. So Jonesy, pronouns are he, him. Welcome to the Sunday show with Matt and Eric.
Hi, I'm Matt. Eric, how are you?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Oh, can
yeah,
you
what I want to say, Matt, is that what I want to say is I don't believe you've lost your salvation.
Okay.
I believe that you are of the elect, and that even though you feel that you've become an atheist, that you feel that you've escaped, that your soul, your spirit is sealed in the other realm, and that when you die physically, you're going to be there. In fact, I believe you're already spiritually in that place, that there is no escape. Okay. Even though you feel that you've unburdened yourself of the shackles of Christianity, you're still a Christian in your innermost core.
At my innermost core. So what you're saying, see, I'm saying I don't actually believe it. Are you saying I do believe it, or are you saying I'm saved even though I don't believe it?
Well, Matt, you were born again. You said that years ago. You were born again once, okay?
Jonesy, I'm
You were
trying to get
repentant
clarification. I asked a very specific question. Are you saying that I do believe even though I say I don't, or are you saying that even though I don't believe, I am in fact still saved? What are you saying?
Yeah. B, even though you don't believe, you are in fact still saved.
Okay. How do you know that?
I believe it.
I didn't
I don't
ask
know
how,
it. It's just a
I
belief.
didn't ask if you believed it. I asked how you know it. Why do you believe it?
How do I know it? Why? Because I'm in the same boat you're in. I'm no longer a believer, but I know that my soul is sealed in that other realm and that there is no escape.
I'm sorry,
I
Jonesy,
also
but
know that what most...
I'm looking for actual sound arguments supported by evidence. So when I ask why you believe something, just telling me that you believe it isn't an answer for why you believe it. And when you say you believe it because you're in the same boat, that also doesn't tell me why you believe it.
Life's experiences make me believe it. Okay?
What
Reading
life
the
experience,
Bible.
what life experience could possibly be enough to convince you that I am saved and destined for paradise?
It isn't paradise. It's not what people imagine.
Oh, well, you know what, Jonesy? Thank you for correcting that little pedantic piece of shit point that's irrelevant. What makes you believe that I'm still saved? Whatever you think I'm saved to, what makes you think I'm still saved?
Because you old cunt, you're of the elect, all right? You're of the elect. You can't escape from that. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Why do you believe that I'm of the elect? Yeah. You hung up. You think I'm afraid of the word cunt? Is that a word to be afraid of? First of all, you're calling from the UK, and I got friends in the UK that toss that word around like it's, popsicle. But if you're, see, the thing is, he said that he's in the same boat, but he also said he's a theist. So he's not in the same boat.
He said he's no longer a believer, then he immediately stated something he believes. So
yeah,
I was getting conflicting information there. Let me ask you this though, Matt.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this though, because I mean, ex Jehovah's Witness, there's no elect being saved or being born again. It's faith by works or salvation by works. So you can literally spend your entire life serving Jehovah, and at the last minute drop the ball and you lose your reward. Can somebody claim they've gone through, like within the faith, can somebody claim that they've gone through a born again experience and are saved, but actually be wrong about it? Like they could genuinely believe it, but they're mistaken. Is that a possibility within the?
So I can't say whether or not they can genuinely believe it, but be mistaken. I don't see any reason why that's not possible.
Yeah.
The issue there is whether or not it's a genuine belief. So for example,
yeah.
I genuinely believed that I was saved. Now I don't believe that I ever was. So I'd have to say that it's possible for someone to sincerely believe and be wrong, because I think I was wrong.
Yeah.
It's not so much, I can't prove whether or not I'm saved. Yeah. This is why I wanted to take the call, because there are Christians who email me or call who will say, once saved, always saved, which is a Protestant doctrine that, a lot of denominations subscribe to. And so they'll be like, I think I have a pastor friend who thinks he's going to see me in heaven. And I really wanted to get in on discussing that with someone who was sincere, and not just, looking for an excuse to call me a cunt.
Let me actually rephrase from the God's point of view in the faith. Can somebody say, I'm saved, genuinely believe it, but then God says, no, you're actually not, you're mistaken? Yes. Is that a possibility under these faiths? Okay.
Absolutely a possibility.
Okay. I was going to ask Jonesy that, because Jonesy was claiming that you were saved and you're still one of the elect. And I was going to ask Jonesy, how does he even know that? Could Matt genuinely believe that he was saved, have gone through a born again experience, but God is saying, nope, you're actually not? How would Jonesy know whether that's the case or not, because
That's
that's
what I was trying
kind
to
of the
get to
starting
with the
point.
question
If
of why.
yeah,
Yeah. Why do you believe that? So here's the thing for those who don't know. The study of what's required for salvation is called soteriology. And it's tied in with things like eschatology, which is about end times things. And it's entire. So from my standpoint of a former Bible believing Southern Baptist, the Bible says that salvation is basically at God's whim. It is God's grace. You are saved by faith through grace and not by works, lest any man should boast. That's why Jehovah's Witnesses are full of shit. But the notion that is there is God. Faith is not something that you can exercise. Faith is the gift that God gives you. So God chooses who is going to be in heaven, and by his very grace decides to save them from eternal torment for whatever criteria God might deem. It might just be that God just likes some people better. Whatever the reason is, it's all a mystery because we don't have any way of investigating and asking God. And God, even if we all went to heaven, there's nothing that says God's ever going to answer your question about any of that. God's not required to tell you why some people are in hell and why others aren't. This notion that you go to hell because you deserve it, that's appealing. It's like, it would be nice because then it seems like justice. But it's under many models of Christianity, you could slaughter an entire nation and then turn your life over to Christ, turn away from your sin, and go to heaven for eternity. Whether you call it heaven or paradise or whatever else, that is at least possible. How often one would presume that it happens or anything else, who knows? But it's, under Christianity, a friend of mine came up with this thing here. Sorry, somebody's going to take this out of context. Hitler identified publicly and privately as a Catholic and was supportive of the Catholic Church. He was also into the occult and all kinds of stuff. I'm not saying Hitler was a good Christian, but Hitler was undeniably supportive and supported by the Catholic Church and used Christianity, however much he sincerely believed, is somebody else's thing. But let's assume for a second that Hitler was a sincere, committed Christian, and Anne Frank was a Jew. Under Christianity, Anne Frank is burning in hell right now because she wasn't a Christian, while Hitler might be basking in heaven. Now, you can say, well, I don't think that happened. Cool, that's your opinion. You're not God. None of us have access from the Christian standpoint of the Lamb's Book of Life. It's up to God to decide whose names are in the book and everything else. And it could be maybe God just decided to save Anne Frank anyway. But once you get into this and start talking about the criteria, it gets wild. And that's why I was wanting to know, why do you think I'm still saved?
It does get weird too, because if I know my Calvinism enough, which is very little, God can only through God can somebody become an elect. God reforms the heart and basically bestows, you are one of the elect and you are now going to heaven. So all those who go to hell, myself included, because I've never had a born again experience, I'm only going to hell because of an inaction on God's part. The only way I could go to heaven is if God took the action to say, you are now one of the elect. So what I do doesn't matter either way. It's really up to God taking an action or not taking an action that will determine whether I go to hell, if my understanding of it is correct. And that creates all kinds of really weird moral dilemmas, as the one you just mentioned earlier. Like if Hitler was one of the elect, and that theology is true, Hitler's in heaven right now. And if Anne Frank, an innocent girl who died because of the Holocaust, is now in hell because God didn't do something on her behalf, then that's on God. That's not on Anne Frank. So yeah, create some really, really weird problems there.
Yeah. By the way, if you're a Christian and you think I'm going to heaven, I'd love to know why. And I'd love to know, in your model, is there anything I can do about it? 'Cause I've talked to my pastor friend who thinks he's going to see me in heaven. And I'm like, how can that possibly be a good thing? That I walked down the aisle at the age of 5 and accepted Jesus into my heart. And I worked, in the church and spread the word for all those years up until I was, in 30-ish, and then turn my back on it, all of it, and actively work against it for the remainder of my life. And you think that I'm going to end up in heaven? First of all, can I change that? Because I don't want to be there. I mean, what you're describing as heaven, I think I would find pretty hellish. But we'll see. All right. So John's calling from Texas. Pronouns are he, him. He's a theist who wants to talk about the possibility of consciousness being an illusion. Ooh. All right, John, you're on with
Hi.
Eric and Matt.
Hey. So, this is kind of a continuation of a conversation we had a few days ago. When I was basically making the claim that, that there's everything in the entire universe just looks like rocks tumbling, from like a materialist perspective. And you kind of jumped to the conclusion, well, that sounds more like that consciousness is an illusion than like that there's like a mind behind everything. And I also, if we could, I wanted to kind of go over, because I kind of made 4 different claims, and they don't really rest on each other, but I actually think we agree on 3 of the 4. It's just like that one claim that we're kind of having an issue with. But I think that seems way more logical than consciousness being an illusion. So I guess first I want to know what you mean by that.
Are you saying that I said consciousness was an illusion? Because that doesn't sound like anything I would ever say.
No. Okay, so you said that if what I was describing is true, that saying that everything in the universe is just taking the path of least action, and then it all looks determinate, and you actually don't see any agency when you get close, that like well, you're saying this sounds like an argument that if true, that means that it sounds like consciousness is an illusion. And I was like, I just don't see how that's a reasonable place to end up at. And I guess you could say that, like, well, we're conscious because, the rocks are arranged in a certain way that suddenly, like, desire comes about. But that sounds way more like weird magic to me than just saying that, no, consciousness is like gravity. It doesn't matter, like, harnesses it doesn't produce it.
John, I just asked if I said consciousness was an illusion, and you said no, and then you told what happened right up to me saying consciousness is an illusion. So let's set but you said I didn't say it, and I don't remember saying it, and I don't think that saying consciousness is an illusion is anything that I would actually say because of Descartes.
Okay.
How can you, hang on, how can you have an illusion without a consciousness there to deceive? So let's throw out everything you think I said the last time we talked and just start over, because Eric wasn't here anyway. So what would you like to talk about?
Well, I'm saying that everything in the universe seems to be governed by the principle of path of least action. That objects seem to be like seeking a state of like normalcy or homeostasis. Some people have been getting on me about the language. It's like, that's not what homeostasis is. I'm getting this from machine learning people in Mike 11, and if that's the word he uses, I think people understand what I'm saying. I think it's fine. Like, things are very much just kind of falling into place, and there doesn't seem to be any agency when you step back. And I was basically saying that, like, honestly, I think it might be that, like, anxiety is tied to entropy in like a fundamental way, and that seems like that could be like what's going on, I guess. And I guess I was also making a claim that, like, by the way, this isn't saying that like the entire universe is like planned out, like technically from a quantum physics perspective, it's indeterminate. Whether you want to make like that, say that's whatever claims you want to make about free will after that, I can't really say. I'm just saying is that your life story isn't determined from
now you just mentioned free will. Are you are you conflating consciousness and free will?
No. I was trying to actually establish. I think we actually agree on the free will question.
It does sound like me to say that free will might be an illusion. It doesn't sound like me to say consciousness was an illusion. So were we talking about free will, or were we talking about consciousness?
No, I mean, you said that if you said what the argument I'm seeming to make would imply that consciousness is an illusion. That's what you said. I think you said it seems to imply. I would start thinking that consciousness is an illusion, and I'm like, I don't see how that could be a reasonable supposition. Is I guess
John,
I'm asking.
John, what's your definition of consciousness?
I would say something like, I mean, I oftentimes just use the word awareness, and so I kind of could get into the distinction. I think that like. Because rocks essentially just have one pathway towards maintaining homeostasis. Cells have more. As cells group together, they give even more pathways. And it's essentially that measurement of how many pathways you have towards intelligence. Is a pathway towards homeostasis the same thing as intelligence? So you can imagine like rock is one, thermostat is number two, like chat GPT, and then like a rat, and then us. You know what I mean? As far as like problem solving,
I'm still a little. So I didn't really get a concrete example or a concrete definition of consciousness. You mentioned awareness, and then you started like saying like, okay, we have levels of consciousness from rock all the way up to human, but that doesn't quite answer my question, because like awareness can be a lot of different things. Like if I poke a mushroom just right, it'll puff off a bunch of spores. Is that because it's aware of me? Is that a consciousness?
So I believe so. Okay, we should actually get into this too. I don't know what you think about this. I think that like all cells are definitely conscious.
Well, I'm still looking for your definition of consciousness before we go into talking about whether cells are conscious or not.
I guess I would say like consciousness is the thing that things are happening to. I guess it's hard to define. I mean, it's just like awareness. It's
I'm
like,
even more.
Why does it feel like there's a perception to be alive? You know what I mean? Why is that?
I agree.
Why doesn't everything? Why do I see anything? You know what I mean? Like
I agree. It's a hard thing. I agree. It's a hard thing to define. These are questions that philosophers have been grappling with for centuries. But if you're going to be coming in here saying that consciousness is an illusion, or you don't, I forget your exact position on it. But if consciousness is an illusion, we need to first concretely define what a consciousness is, and then from there we can start analyzing it. Yeah. You don't think it's an illusion?
I don't think it. No. I think that makes no sense. But I guess for me, with the like the thing I'm laying out, there's essentially like three possibilities. One is that consciousness is an illusion. I don't think that makes much sense at all. One is that, well, you could kind of make like a Punnett square. Like one is that like consciousness only exists in like or complex organisms, things that we seem like they have agency. I think it seems like rocks have agency, but like things that seem like they have agency, like and just say, well, the illusion of consciousness just comes into a certain place when you arrange them in a certain spiral and whatever. I think that sounds like ridiculousness. Or you could say, then again, they say that, well, no, consciousness is real. It's sort of, and then I don't know, maybe you could say it's responsible for the determinacy, quantum indeterminacy, or something like that. And
are you treating consciousness
as is solved emotionally?
So John, are you treating consciousness as like a discrete object or as a property of something?
I'm not treating it as an object.
Okay, so we're treating it as a property or an attribute of something else.
I guess.
So like if a car is going fast, is fast an illusion?
No.
Okay.
I mean, kind of actually, yeah. I mean, fast doesn't mean anything objectively.
Okay. So maybe consciousness is in that same category. Maybe consciousness is just a set of attributes that meet a certain threshold, and things may or may not hit that or not.
I mean, I'm saying the category of fast, that only exists to something subjective. Like everything, I don't even know what speed is for that subjective.
Maybe consciousness is subjective.
I guess I mean, you could say that you could say, okay, we could say we could create different levels of something like awareness. We could say that, like whatever a thermostat has, it's even if it's just on 0.1 on the timeline, it's so different that we just say it's something else.
Right.
Like if you want to do that, that's fine.
Right.
I'm just saying it seems to be like a 1 on the spectrum that keeps going.
Right. What if so are you basically pointing at humans and saying this is like 10 on the spectrum of consciousness? Like we're maxed out?
No, I wouldn't say we're maxed out. No.
Okay. Because I was gonna posit
like we organize more intelligence together than just singularly. I mean that's like obvious.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say hypothetically, let's think of like hyper intelligent aliens that are like 100 on the consciousness scale, and they might look at us and go, "Wow, these creatures aren't even conscious because they're so far above and beyond anything we can consider consciousness." That's the thing. Like
maybe,
we're talking about.
But like I mean, we're getting into weird. I mean, I'm not necessarily.
I know, but what I'm trying to.
I think the aliens would just come in here and not say they aren't conscious. I think they would just say their consciousness is very little. As Mike 11 would say, their cognitive light cone of problems they're interested to solve is very narrow and small.
Right. So I guess I was trying to tie it back to like the cargo fast analogy, like. Consciousness is something that we describe as an attribute of something else. If a brain is suddenly deactivated because a person dies, that consciousness is quote unquote no longer there. It's no longer a property of that brain. It's not that it went anywhere. It's just we no longer describe that object as such, right? So if a car goes from stop to go, we can say, okay, that car is going fast. When the car stops, the fast didn't go anywhere. It's just no longer an attribute of that particular object, right? So if you want to talk about consciousness if you want to talk about consciousness as being an illusion, first of all, we have to concretely identify what consciousness is in concrete terms, set thresholds, set metrics, and say, okay, if it meets this criteria, we can consider that conscious. If it doesn't, it's not conscious.
But I think it doesn't make sense on its own grounding. It's like saying words don't exist. I saw someone say it in the comments. I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, how could you say that words don't exist? You're using. It's like that's just. In fact, consciousness in a way is like I'm not even sure if like anything else in my entire life is real, except for my consciousness in a certain extent. That's the thing. Therefore, I am kind of thing.
Sure.
It's like
sure. That's I adopt that as well as probably one of the only things I'm 100% confident in is my existence, because I exist in some form in order to consider my existence.
So I think we can knock that hypothesis off just on assuming that the universe is logical and only logical things can exist.
I might be losing the thread here. So what is the main thrust of your call? Do you have a question? Do you have a point you want to make? Like what is the point of the call here?
Well, I guess there's a couple points. I mean, one, I think that so Matt in our last conversation, I guess I didn't take this idea as far as I could, but in the last conversation you said that the minerals don't have any agency. It's the forces of the universe acting on the mineral. And I said yes. I'm saying that from a materialist perspective, the same thing is true of you. You don't see any agency in your body. And that's kind of like I mentioned this idea of a top-down, bottom-up causation. And that's what I'm saying. It's like there are forces in the universe that are pushing you. You know what I mean? And actually the same process that's giving you ideas in your head are the same processes that created you and created all the structured patterns in the universe to begin with. It is like, in the more I think once you accept that, like a lot of Eastern and Western philosophy, people saying, don't lie to yourself, or you'll pollute souls in your water and you won't be able to hear the word of God. And, you know what I mean? Like all these sorts of things start to make a lot of sense. It's very real. It's like, yeah, the universe has a logic. If you corrupt your structure, you won't be able to hear it whispering to you. You know what I mean? I think that all makes perfect sense to me, I guess. And then you also have to get the idea of well, if there's a mind behind me and you can't see it, why wouldn't I assume there's also a mind behind rocks, and rocks are actually getting comfortable? Really, that's why when in some sense, I'm not really saying, but you start to arrive at a very Christian understanding very fast. All these things are true in my opinion.
Whoa.
They seem to be true.
Whoa. What the hell do you mean that you start to arrive at a very Christian understanding very fast? Literally nothing you've said points in any way towards a very Christian understanding of anything, not the least of which is the difference that agency has a particular definition within philosophy that includes humans but excludes rocks. I'm sorry that you're having difficulty with it, but even if you're correct about a brute, hard, deterministic, materialistic world where I am indistinguishable from a rock, the question then becomes, so what?
I don't really care about what the philosophers say about the rock fundamentally. If the scientists are saying something else, I'm going to trust the scientists. And from a scientific perspective, yeah, there's no more agency in you than a rock. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, okay. I wish you to fucking listen to me.
Okay.
Since I just said, if that's the case and there's no difference between a human and a rock, so what? I didn't say, nor did I suggest. I didn't say, nor did I suggest that we should pay attention to philosophers over scientists. I talked about the fact that you are dismissing agency, and within the philosophical world, that's a mistake. If you want to say the scientists can't find agency
I'm saying
in a
rocks
materialistic
have
universe,
agency.
would you keep fucking interrupting me, John?
Okay.
If you want to say that within the scientific community, they don't find agency, okay, cool. My question remains, so what? How does that get you to therefore Christianity?
I'm saying, so what? One, doesn't mean the agency doesn't exist. I'm saying, so two, I guess, I don't know, it seems very logical to conclude that it also exists in rocks. And I know there are people who study minerals who say that, who are like, yeah, rocks are making a decision and we don't know how.
Who's saying that rocks are making a decision? What science is that?
I don't know. It's something I've always heard, and I always thought it was like ridiculous. But I've been like writing this out and thinking about what Michael Evans talks about, and he's actually brought this up too. That like
Michael Evans, a biologist. What the fuck does Michael Evans know about? What the fuck does he know about rocks?
A lot. He knows a lot about a lot of things. He's like very well read.
Okay, go talk to him then.
Okay, I love you. Bye.
I don't love you. Does that make you happy? Why? Why are you bailing? I asked you a question. I asked, what difference does it make? And you're like, I heard some scientists say that rocks are making decisions. Well, I haven't heard that. I haven't seen any evidence that rocks are making decisions. I'd love some evidence that rocks make decisions. Well, I heard it from a biologist. Okay, what's a biologist know about rocks? Oh, he's a really smart guy, knows a lot about a lot of stuff. Cool. Go call him. Call his show. But in the meantime, you could have just answered my question, because let's assume for a second that from a materialistic scientific point of view, there's nothing agency-minded about me, that I am indistinguishable from a rock, or that maybe rocks also have agency. How does that lead you to a very Christian understanding of reality? I mean, that's what you were saying, and that's what I objected to. And then you ran away after I praised you last week, John, for being an honest interlocutor. Why are you running? I don't know what Michael Evans knows about rocks and their agency. But
I'm actually
cool.
I'm actually getting on board with him. I think I do know a rock that has agency. His name's Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, right.
I'm still failing to grasp. Like, was he arguing that consciousness was an illusion, or that against it? Like, I even asked him, like, what's the point of this call, and I still didn't get an answer. It was just a lot of gobbledygook and tangents.
There was a lot of discussion last time about
it. It seems like the thrust of the call was consciousness is not an illusion; it exists, and then from there we can start building towards a Christian worldview. That's kind of what I was gathering from that.
He thinks every cell is conscious.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you, he said it really quickly while you guys were having this discussion, and I don't know if you caught it, but he said he thinks every cell is conscious. And evidently he thinks rocks are conscious.
So my fingernail clippings conscience? Multiple consciousnesses in there. There's multiple cells in there, right?
Yep. Every time I brush my arm across and shatter off skin cells, I'm throwing thousands of consciousness down to their demise.
And so when I disinfect my kitchen counter, I'm just committing genocide then.
Yeah. Imagine what happens
interesting.
when you like masturbate or something. It's like, oh, you rubbed off a lot of skin cells, and you threw away sperm that might have created it's just another consciousness. So on that fundamental level, a rock and a cell and me are all the same. And yet this is one of the things where I'm like, I was making this distinction within philosophy, that philosophically agency has a definition. I'm not convinced that agency has any definition in biology, and I don't know that there's any definition of agency within geology, which would be where rocks come in. But it's like John seems to be floundering around trying to find stuff. And I think legitimately when he suggested that I said consciousness was an illusion, that I think he meant I said free will might be an illusion, and I think he was conflating the two. I think if we went back to the call from the other day, that would be it. Because it doesn't seem like me to say that consciousness is an illusion, because an illusion is something that happens to a perceiver, and a perceiver is conscious or potentially conscious. It depends, like for example, my camera is right here. Is it a perceiver? No, it's not. It is gathering information and doing it, but it's not making any decisions. Even if all of my decisions are predetermined, even if there's just a hard deterministic thing and everything, I'm still an agent acting to do stuff, even if it was ultimately predetermined that I was acting to do it.
Even if we roll with that, pardon my dog, by the way, even if we rolled with what he was trying to get at, and it's like cells are conscious, we're conscious, the universe is conscious, so like everything's conscious. Where does that get us? Like, if everything's conscious, then you can say that nothing's conscious. It's kind of a useless attribute at that point because you can't differentiate it from anything else. But also, how does that even get you to a Christian God? I'm going to kick my dog out.
I don't know, because John got upset and left, but that's fine. And John's back, but you'll have to wait because I've already clicked on this call from Michael in Georgia. Has a question about something I said that Michael misunderstood. So, hi, Michael. I'm happy to correct this.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'd just like to give a shout out to Jay Snow. Is that one of the host names?
Michael, why are you giving a shout out to someone whose name you don't know? Would you just ask your question so that I can correct your misunderstanding?
All right. So you said that Hitler wasn't a good Christian, and I'd just like to ask. Pardon me?
That's not what I said.
Okay, what did you say? Clarify.
I said, I'm not saying Hitler was a good Christian.
Okay.
There you
Thank
go.
you for clarifying. All right.
I don't get to decide whether somebody's a good Christian or not. I'm not convinced who does. I think it's a fallacy. And that's how I knew when the second you called, when you said that I said Hitler wasn't a good Christian, that's not actually what was going on.
Okay. I misheard. One of the reasons why I wanted to give a shout out to Jay Snow is because he's personally my hero. I know that.
No, I'm sorry. I entertained your misunderstanding, but you don't get to go on to give a shout out to someone whose name you didn't know and then try to claim that they're your hero. I think that you are in. Well, we'll just leave it at confused. All right. This is a different John who's been on hold for like almost 2 hours. And hey, John, you're an atheist, pronouns are he, him from California. You're on with Eric and Matt.
Hi, how's it going? First of all, let me just say, I've been listening to you for years, and I'm a big fan. And you've helped shape a lot of my research into philosophy. So thank you.
Okay,
but I do have a question, and this is sort of about something that kind of came up. Eric was saying that he sort of subscribes to the idea that I think, therefore I am, which is, if I understand correctly, kind of an appeal to solipsism in a way, which kind of gets at my point indirectly. But if you accept, I think, therefore I am, how do you know you can trust your thoughts? Because if a malevolent entity could be altering what you perceive about reality, and the only thing you know is your own thoughts, how do you know that same entity could not be manipulating your thoughts? That is sort of a question to Eric and sort of what he was saying earlier.
So the only thing I claim with confidence is that I exist, because in order for me to exist, to consider my existence, I must exist to be able to consider that. That's the only thing I claim to any degree of like absolute maximal confidence. Let's put it that way. That doesn't mean I can eliminate solipsism. That doesn't mean I can eliminate a trickster, god, or entity playing tricks on my mind, feeding me false information, confusing me, anything like that. The only claim I make is that I exist in some form. This form might not necessarily be it. I'm highly confident that this form is it, but I can't eliminate those small possibilities of I'm a brain in a jar, I'm a simulation, I'm just the dream of some god or something like that. I can't eliminate any of those things, and I can't eliminate solipsism. I don't adopt those because I think the probability of those being true is extremely low. I tend to just accept reality the way it's presented to me because it's really the only way that I can operate and survive.
Yeah, that makes sense. I really have a question that is about solipsistic arguments in general, because I've been thinking about them a lot. And I think that the problem of induction is actually a type of solipsistic argument, and feel free to correct me if you don't think so. But ultimately, what my conclusion is that basically all solipsistic arguments is taking a carefully constructed hypothetical that is constructed to be unfalsifiable and trying to point to that as potential evidence against what seems to be self-evidently true.
I don't know if solipsistic arguments are designed to be unfalsifiable. I think it's just a matter of reality that we can't verify each other's minds and existences, because any verification method that we run on that could be part of the solipsistic, scenario where I'm either generating the results I'm seeing or something else is feeding them to me. I don't think they're unfalsifiable by design. I think it's just a limitation of reality. There's some questions that are just simply unfalsifiable due to the nature of the reality we live in.
I
don't know
if I agree with that.
Are you leaning towards or away from solipsism? Or are you just trying to come up with a comfortable answer for it?
I completely dismiss solipsism in that there isn't evidence to support it. And if you're talking about what, first of all, I know that ultimately I cannot have certainty. I know that. But what is more likely to be true based on what I perceive? To me, I find that existence is real far more likely than there is some other form of existence that some powerful entity for some unknown reason is choosing to manipulate me into believing some other reality. That all just seems ridiculous to me, and I see no evidence for it. And I don't see how, as it is an unfalsifiable, nothing can be evidence for or against it. So it dismissed out of pocket.
Okay. I think we're in general agreement there. So is there a point of contention you want to bring up, or is it just the way I worded something earlier? Or?
Well, no, it was just the way I view I think, therefore I am as a justification for one's own existence is sort of similar to an appeal to solipsism, but it's not exactly, but it's sort of adjacent to, because you're saying that a function of reality, which is you thinking about your ability to exist, justifies your belief that you do in fact exist.
No. So the problem of hard solipsism exists. There is no way that we know of to demonstrate that the reality that we apparently experience and share is actually the really real reality. And so Descartes famously came up with, I think, therefore I am, cogito ergo sum. And it is a demonstration that even if I'm not experiencing the actual reality, if I'm inventing a reality or somebody else external is inventing a reality and forcing it on me, in both of those situations, there still must be a me. The mere fact that there is a perceiver to deceive demonstrates that the perceiver exists, even if what the perceiver is perceiving doesn't exist. Now, that, the cogito, is brilliant. And while it doesn't solve the problem of hard solipsism, it does confirm that one exists independent of whether or not the reality you experience exists. But that whole cogito is contingent on the primacy of reason, which is what Hobbes pointed out, that the only way Descartes' thing works is if reason is in fact reasonable, which we can't demonstrate. And then you get to Hume and the problem of induction and whether or not we can make inductive inferences about, is tomorrow going to be pretty much like today? Is this uniformity and predictability, is that expandable? And there's no solution to the problem of induction that I'm aware of either, even though Karl Popper has, had tried to do it with falsification as a primary thing. There are objections to that. So basically, we've now addressed a couple of philosophical things for which there doesn't seem to be any solution. What's the point?
I mean, I guess I was just sort of interested in discussing it. But would you clarify for me, because I think you seem to be far more knowledgeable about it than I am, is the category of problem that the problem of induction seems to be related to solipsism. Are they the same type of argument, or is it okay to say they are both solipsistic arguments?
I would not call them both solipsistic arguments, just to avoid confusion. Even if they are tied to some similar concept, it's like not everything that involves infinity is a version of Zeno's paradox. And so not everything that involves the foundations of reason, not everything that involves addressing whether or not reality is real is necessarily a solipsistic argument. But in the realm of reason, where we're talking about the problem of induction, that's true whether the reality we experience is real or not. And it's one of those things that would apply to any universe under which, real or otherwise, under which someone is trying to use inductive reasoning to say, is reality, is the package, the box that I'm in, is it reliable? Because the other question is, if it's been reliable every day throughout the 13.7 billion years of its known history, does that mean it's going to be reliable and consistent tomorrow? And the answer is no, but we operate as if it is, as under the principle of parsimony, that it's more probable than not that things are going to continue to work the way they've apparently worked. It's absurd to think that I'm going to, it's absurd to think that before this call is over, I will apparently de-age to 18 and have a brown beard while live on TV. That would violate the kind of uniformity and the predictability of the universe. I can't say that it can't happen. I just have no reason to believe that it would, or that it's likely to. And so when we're engaged in the sort of inductive reasoning, we're not making proclamations about what is true. We're saying, if the universe is uniform, and if we are able to infer things like causality and repeatable effects of things, then it is reasonable to conclude that this is going to be the likely outcome. And we do that just, I'm not going to drop my phone or my glasses, but hey, if I were to take this rubber band and let go of it, I'm going to infer, I'm going to use some scientific inquiry here to consider everything I know about this situation and inductively reach the conclusion that when I let go of it, it's going to fall in a downward direction. And it did, but it didn't have to. It could have gone up, or could it? I guess it's more accurate to say, I don't know that it couldn't have gone up. But I don't know what that gets us, because as much as I love the discussions and the show, I don't think we're solving the problem of hard solipsism or induction on this show today.
Absolutely not. And I, of course, didn't think we would at all. Like I said, I was more just interested in discussion. I guess my last question would be, since you you say that you think they are related, but wouldn't be comfortable calling it a solipsistic argument. Is there some categorization that you think would be appropriate to use arguments that fall under this? They seem to be a fundamental component of reality, and because of that, we can't really prove them within reality. Like, if there is a word for that besides a solipsistic argument.
Well, if we're getting to the problem of induction, that is within the field of epistemology, of how do we know what we know, of the very foundations of what is reason, how reliable is it, how much can we rely on it, and how confident should we be in it. So they're just arguments within epistemology, or issues within epistemology, for me.
Okay.
Talk to 10 philosophers, you'll get at least one other answer, if not 9 or 10.
Yeah, I haven't been able to really get a good answer on that. But I do appreciate your insights. Thank you very much.
I recently had on my Wednesday night show, Kane B, on YouTube. Go check out some of his videos on this. I haven't seen it, but I almost guarantee you that he's got a video on the problem of induction, and probably on solipsism, and others on epistemology. And even if, neither one of us end up agreeing with him, it's still a good start, and he does good videos, and that's why I want to have him on.
And you said that was Plan B?
Kane, Kane. If you go back a Wednesday or two, on my Hang Up show, in the description, there'll be a link to his stuff.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks, John.
One of the reasons why on Wednesdays I try to get people in who know stuff that I don't know. So I was actually digging in to get an actual, PhD philosopher in here, not just so I could discuss, the knowability paradox or Newcomb's paradox. Although I am doing a whole series on paradoxes, kind of for fun.
Yeah, I am by no means a philosopher. I just dabble in it as a hobby. So there's a lot of gaps in my knowledge. But when you start getting down to kind of the philosophical bedrock of why are things the way they are, dealing with your presuppositions and, the problem of induction, and why the universe is consistent day to day, and will it continue to be consistent day to day, and any potential ways to solve those problems is, in most cases are circular, because you're using the presuppositions to try to go back and prove the presuppositions. It's fun, murky water to play around in. There's like all kinds of stuff's possible down there. It's fun stuff. So yeah, I appreciated the conversation, John.
This is the other problem as well, is, when you're trying to demonstrate your reason by using reasoning. And even if you were going to try to say, oh, I can, why should we care about identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, those sorts of things? And that's because you would have to assume they were true in order to try to prove that they were false. And that leads you to a contradiction. And then the answer is yes, but why is it a problem for there to be a contradiction if you're actually discussing the law of non-contradiction, if you can't verify the law of non-contradiction? And so doesn't appear to be any solution to it. And so all we can do is say that I can demonstrate this with the simplest Venn diagram, a single circle that describes both identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. And we can say that, as far as we can tell, there are no circumstances under which that's not true. Applies to everything. And people are like, what about, quantum mechanics where there's quantum indeterminacy? Okay, something is either indeterminate or it's not. And everything is either indeterminate, and nothing is both indeterminate and not indeterminate in the same way at the same the same way at the same time. But it's a difficult thing. But we have a return caller, and that is John, who was on previously, is back. So welcome back, John.
Hi. I guess, I want to, if you're curious, you want to talk about, you kind of acted like it was really crazy, the idea that your individual cells are conscious and that your body is a collective conscious. I guess, where do you think consciousness comes in? Because my understanding is that all of your cells have the exact same things as neurons. They communicate the same way as neurons. It's just that your neurons are just specialized highways that some cells turn into to integrate information and travel information faster. So where do you think? Because it doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, sorry.
neurons are a specific type of cell. Not all cells have neurons. Not all cells are neurons. Not all cells have neurons. Neurons are nerve cells.
Yeah, but I'm saying that like they're just a more specialized version of the same thing that all your other cells has. Like all your cells communicate by the same means as neurons and have the same properties and the same principles as neurons.
No. So
okay.
The fact that something is a nerve cell doesn't mean it's conscious. So we have a cell that is a neuron, and we have a cell that's not a neuron, and then we have a collection of neurons wired together in a particular way. I'm saying there's no evidence that the non-nerve cell, that the cell that's not a neuron, there's no evidence that it is conscious. And the neuron, the single cell, has not demonstrated consciousness as we would describe it in and of itself, but a network of neurons wired together in a particular way allows the sort of conscious awareness that we would describe in that way. That's why we tend to say that consciousness is an emergent property of a brain, because the brain is where a bunch of neurons are and how they are wired together. And only when they are wired together in particular ways and are actively alive and doing stuff do we call that consciousness.
Okay. So I guess I would say two things. I mean, I guess there's a weird phenomenon where you can split a person's corpus callosum, and it seems like they have two,
Yeah, this is a talk that I've. This is a talk that I've referenced dozens of times from V.S. Ramaswamy. And yes, if you sever the corpus callosum, the person will essentially have two independent consciousnesses that communicate independently and have different likes and preferences. And in one of the cases that he spoke about, one of the two consciousness was an atheist and the other one was a theist.
That makes sense, actually. That actually makes a lot of sense. One side of your brain tends to, like, what do you say, understand things as, like, mechanical, and the other, like, understand things as, like, more like of a whole flow kind of weird thing. So that actually makes actually a lot of sense. But anyways, so like when
that's an example of
like
two distinct.
Like, a single cell. If you take a single cell,
hang on. So we have this example that you brought up, where we can take someone who has a single identifiable conscious and will and desire and all the things that we package together. Then we take an act that separates this, and you end up with two distinct consciousnesses with different personalities, memories, likes, all that other stuff. And yet now you're still at this point where that's two consciousnesses and not 85 billion consciousnesses, because not every neuron is conscious.
Well, I guess I think it's just that their information is all integrated together. Like, so like a single cell, when you add more cells to it, all you do is you're increasing its ability to problem solve. You're not adding anything fundamental to it. Like, I don't know why.
No, sir. We're not increasing the single cell's ability to problem solve. We're increasing the network's ability to problem solve. And it is the collective network, not the individual cell, is where we identify consciousness.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. So you could also say a network of two cells is conscious. Like, I don't know. Do you think you just need to have two cells for it to be conscious?
Find two cells and demonstrate that they're consciousness, and make the argument and make the case and earn yourself a Nobel Prize. But so far, nobody said,
how would I do that differently than I would demonstrate that it's real in you?
I don't know, but you could start by not interrupting me while I'm still finishing what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's not my job to figure out how you'll demonstrate the thing that you're fucking asserting. It's your job to figure out how to demonstrate that, isn't it? You believe it.
I mean, I think I'm explaining it pretty well. I mean, so like you don't.
No, you're not.
I can feel the consciousness in my hands right now if I focus on it.
So
John, you think you can feel the consciousness in your hand? I literally said, if you think two cells are conscious, then demonstrate it and earn a Nobel Prize. And your response was, How can I do that? And my response is, that's not my problem. I'm not the one actively saying I believe one cell is alive or two cells is, or one cell is conscious or two cells are conscious. You're claiming that. You have the burden of proof, and you're the one that has to come up with the way to demonstrate that, not the guy on the show you called.
I'm saying that the cells, there's no fundamental difference between you and the two cells. It's the scaling issue, and I don't think you don't become a different kind when you scale things.
This isn't scaling. Just like if me and you and Eric were down in my garage and the three of us decided to work together on a project, are the results going to be the same as if one of us were working on it?
No, you'd be more intelligent together.
Okay, you just disproved the thing you said a minute ago, so okay.
Wait, what? How is that disproving it? That you guys would be more intelligent working on it together than alone?
So John, if I was down in the garage by myself, all right, I'm working on a problem, all right, and then my body grows more skin cells while I'm there working. I now have more cells than I did when I entered that garage. Am I now more intelligent?
Yeah. Well, actually, that happens when you're growing and developing. When you're solving problems and you're eating and your brain grows.
I'm growing skin cells right now, John. John, I'm growing skin cells right now. Let's say, for instance, that I'm losing less skin cells than I'm currently growing. I'm currently growing more skin cells than I'm losing. My number of cells are increasing right at this very moment. Am I becoming more intelligent right now?
Well, I mean, like, you have to divide, like, you're intelligent
if I lop off,
to solving
if I lop
problems.
off,
so if I
lop off my arm right now, if I lop off my arm right now, do I become less intelligent? How do you even measure this?
I mean, in a technical way, yes. In a very technical way, yes. The amount of problems that you can solve.
What do you mean technical way? Can you demonstrate that I'm less intelligent or not if I lop off my arm?
Have you lost?
I'm asking you, how do you fall?
I mean, you've lost the memories that you would use to grab stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's all probably gone. I mean, that's actually kind of hard because memories are
think the memories? You think memories that I have of grabbing things are in my arm?
So like what's happening with memory is that your body is.
John, I asked you a simple question.
No, this is important.
John, if I can name,
I get the question you're answering, but this mechanism is actually.
Oh, I'm muting you because, so first of all, nobody asked about memory. I don't know that you're an expert on memory. I don't know that's relevant. John, I'm going to ask you a question. If I can name the fallacy that you've repeatedly committed here, will you drop this and acknowledge it?
I mean, probably, but can I finish what I was saying? Because this is actually kind of interesting and relevant, I think.
No, the fact that it's interesting to you doesn't mean that it's interesting to me or the audience. You're committing the fallacy of division, the fallacy that a property of the whole is contained within its parts. That is the fallacy of division. It may be true, but you need to demonstrate it. Just asserting that this is the way it works is in fact the fallacy of division.
Well, I mean, I've heard Richard Dawkins. Wait, am I back in? Hello?
Okay, now I'm going to mute you because I don't care what you've heard Richard Dawkins say. I don't give a shit what Richard Dawkins or anybody else said. I pointed out the fallacy of division. Are you going to acknowledge that fallacy, or are you going to bring up another red herring by appealing to Richard Dawkins, who I don't give a fuck what he said?
I mean, honestly, I can't. I would have to know more about the fallacy to say whether or not if I like.
Well, then maybe
believe it or
the
not.
best thing you
I mean,
can
to me,
do
what
is
I'm
look
describing
at the fallacy of division.
Okay. But this question you're asking about memory in your arm is very interesting. Like, I don't know. Like so what happens when your body is marking prescient states? Like, you hit your finger with a hammer. What it does is that your cells are sharing the cells of the fingers in your hand. Remember that state, and through a process of osmosis that goes across the other cells, gets stored up essentially in your hippocampus, and you have an entire stamp of your whole body in there. And if you want to access the memory, what's actually happening is the whole thing is unfolding again across your whole body. You can even unfold it, flip it backwards, you can imagine, and then you can feel in the other hand and stuff too. But it's you're really accessing past states of the universe. This is correct. I see you nodding no.
All right, John. Okay, hold on. John. Stop. John, stop.
Nobody believes you anymore.
if you're wrong about all this, how would you know?
I'm being technically correct.
John,
and that's
if you were wrong about all,
you don't have to believe me.
You're not technically correct, and I think your last name is Snow, but I'll bow out now.
It's Grieger.
John.
Grieger.
It's
John.
Snow. You know nothing, Jon Snow, but I'll let you.
John, if you were wrong about all this, how would you know it?
If I was wrong about this, how would I know it?
Yeah. If you were mistaken about all this, let's say you're just completely going down the wrong path and you're just completely wrong about it. Just hypothetically, just for a moment, pretend like you're wrong about this. How would you know that?
I think what would happen was I would see someone who is like as from understanding of memory, or more from understanding like provable. Because Michael Levin, he's not just like making up.
I'm not asking. I'm not asking you. Talking to other John.
Of animals.
John. John, friend.
Okay,
how
John,
would you know?
I've muted you for a second so that Eric can ask his question. Name drop is going to get you nowhere, but ask it. Go ahead,
John. I'm talking about falsification here.
Yeah.
Okay. If I wanted to falsify gravity, all I would have to do is say, if I want to falsify gravity, I would just have to drop this pen and it would fly up. Very, very clear falsification criteria for gravity. Okay. I'm asking you, all right, if cells have consciousness and you're wrong, if you think cells have consciousness and you're wrong about that, how would you know? One falsification criteria.
I have to give kind of. First, I would say
I don't care. I don't care about preamble. I'm asking what.
Well, I'm just saying I would believe what I was saying was wrong if someone came up with a better theory to explain the sort of things that Michael Levin is finding.
And there's your next fallacy. There's your next fallacy. Believing something until somebody proves you wrong is essentially an argument from incredulity. It is arrogance on parade. It's an acknowledgement that you don't have sufficient reason to believe it, but you're going to believe it anyway. And now you're shifting the burden of proof onto everybody else to prove that you're wrong. Meanwhile, your thing about memory ignores, it would have been nice if you listened to the rest of V.S. Ramaswamy's talk about mirror neurons and severing the corpus callosum, because you should look up phantom limb syndrome as well, because that's relevant to this. That shows that the memory of the arm is not contained in the arm.
Okay, I mean, like, honestly, I listen to people like neuroscientists all day, and they never say anything that's like, oh, that's completely out. That doesn't fit up with what I understand. Like, I'm not, like, citing strange things. I'm just citing things that are at the forefront that are talked about by people like Carl Friston and Michael Levin, and people who are actually at the forefront of machine learning and bioengineering and AI, and these are the mathematical principles that they're deriving. Like, if
John,
like I'm,
what did I tell you about
like,
name dropping?
Yeah,
John,
what did I tell you about name dropping? If you're just going to name drop to avoid the fact that you've now committed multiple fallacies that have been identified by name and by structure and identifying them, why should we bother to keep talking to you? Because now you've gone from someone who was an honest interlocutor last time to just, every time you get called out, it's, well, let me say Michael Levin and this, and I'm just talking about what's on the forefront, and there's memory in this, and that's, it has nothing to do with anything you've pointed to, and none of it points to Christianity, which is your whole fucking point. By the way, are the scientists that you're pointing to, have they reached the conclusion of Christianity?
So actually, I listened to a podcast. Okay, I'm going to talk about the
yes or no.
But like, I listened to a podcast
yes or no question, John.
With Levin, with Michael Levin and Bernardo
That's a yes
Castro,
or no question.
And they start off. Yes, the answer is yes.
Yes.
They start off the conversation.
Okay, I'm going to mute you because there are people who no longer think that you're serious, and I don't want to give the chat the credence of that. When we ask a question after entertaining and identifying your fallacies, just answer the damn question so that we can get on to the next thing. This is not your show. You're lucky I let you even call back in after ditching earlier. So, of the forefront of neuroscientists that you're listening to, what percentage of them are Christians because of neuroscience?
I have no idea.
That's correct. I'll believe that answer. Thank you.
Okay, so I've heard Michael Levin and Bernardo Castro literally start off a podcast saying, like, if you put a gun to my head, theory, if I was trying to explain how the universe works, they would say that it seems like there was something like a unified mind in perfect homeostasis that was.
Why do I care? Okay, I'm muting you again. John, do you have an evidence-based argument to make, or are you just going to continue to appeal to a biologist and what he said he'd say with a gun to his head, which doesn't change anything? It's not an argument. It's not evidence. It doesn't demonstrate anything. Stop fucking hero worshiping people and make a case. I don't give a flying, if I don't care what Dawkins said, and I've sat on stage with him, why would I give a fuck whether or not Michael Levin will think there's some designer with a gun to his head? He's a biologist. He has zero expertise in God. Are you going to make a case, or are you going to keep trying to name drop?
No, and honestly, I think this entire time I've been showing that I actually very much do understand the logical arguments, and they're actually not that hard to grasp and simple. I'm not just name dropping. I'm explaining what exactly I believe.
Goodbye, John.
Okay.
You failed to identify the fallacy. You said you didn't fucking understand it. And now, after you've name dropped for the 20th time, now you're going to
understand.
No, you don't fucking understand it. You said you didn't understand it. And that's why I suggested you needed to fucking go look it up. You liar.
When did I say I didn't understand what? The logical fallacy or the research?
The division that you wouldn't fucking acknowledge.
Yeah.
The
John,
fallacy of division. What's the fallacy of division?
John, John, earlier...
Stop. You just said, what's the fallacy of division? How fucking dare you suggest that you understand this shit when we already went down this road, and I told you needed to go look up the fallacy of fucking division, and now you're going to pretend like you know it, but you don't know it. You're a fucking liar, John. Why are you doing that?
I never pretended like I knew it.
Why are you doing that?
I never pretended like I knew it.
Why are you doing that? You fucking liar.
Can you explain it to me? I've never heard of that fallacy.
Why are you doing that?
Okay, this is so productive.
If you've never heard of that fallacy, and you committed it, then clearly you've demonstrated that you don't have a good understanding of the logic. Isn't that correct?
Of logic, or of that specific thing? Of logic in general, or
of the fallacy of fucking division that you committed, that I called out? How dare you at the end of all this?
Can you say it again?
Shut the fuck up, John. You're muted. After I called you out for a fallacy, you said you didn't understand it. We dropped it, and you can go look at it. Then you kept doing the name dropping thing. And then you said the words, you think you have demonstrated an understanding of logic in this discussion. No, you fucking haven't. You wouldn't acknowledge the fallacy. You've repeatedly said you aren't familiar with that fallacy. Go fucking Google it. But you're not doing this logically.
Okay. I guess if you could bring up the logical fallacy again, we could discuss it, and I could properly evaluate to see if I'm actually making that mistake. Right now, I'm just not going to trust you. That's just another logical fallacy of believing authority.
John.
You're just yelling.
John, I'm muting you. Okay? I suggested you go fucking look it up and learn. And now you're saying you're a fucking liar who's suggesting that I'm suggesting you should just trust me. Never did I say just fucking trust me. I specifically told you to go look it up. I'm going to ban you from the show, you dishonest, lying fuck. How you like them apples?
I don't think I'm dishonest at all. I see people in the chat saying I'm playing with Matt. I'm not playing with Matt. Yeah, I'm a real person. As fun as that seems. But
last chance, last chance. You want to get banned?
I don't know what I did wrong or what I can do to fix that.
You accused me of suggesting that you just needed to trust me on the fallacy. When did I do that?
I'm saying when your actions of not explaining it, and then just saying that, and I'm like, just tell me,
John,
we can talk about it.
Do you think that I have a duty?
You don't admit it.
John, do you think that I have a duty to explain the fallacy to you when I told you to go fucking look it up and you haven't?
I didn't know you meant right now on my computer. I didn't know that'd be good radio. I thought we could take everyone along with us.
You're done. You're done. Don't call me again. I have zero patience for people who are going to accuse me. You commit a fallacy. We point out the fallacy. You're not aware of that fallacy. Could you please describe it? Yes. As a matter of fact, I did fucking describe it to you when I mentioned it. The fallacy of division is concluding that the individual parts share a property that exists in the whole. It's the opposite of the fallacy of composition, which is when you conclude that the whole shares a property with the individual parts. I'm sorry that you haven't bothered to look up fallacies, but you committed it. I identified it, and I told you what the fuck it was. And when you said you weren't familiar with it, I said, go look it up. For you to suggest that you've demonstrated that you know how to argue logically here, and then, what didn't I get right? What didn't I? Well, that's just asking me to trust you. No, at no point did I say trust me, John. Your fucking obnoxious, nervous background laughter that you constantly do every time you're completely trapped and in over your head is annoying. But I don't.
The second fallacy and all that too was when I asked for falsification criterion for, cells or conscious, his response was, well, somebody else would have to prove something else to be true. Argument from ignorance. You're saying my position is true until it's demonstrated to be false. Like that right there is a very, very simple logical fallacy. You admitted to it straight up. And I was going to ask you, okay, well, let's say I have a string of bank robberies in my area, and I talk to a bunch of people, and I talk to, people on podcasts, listen to stuff. And John, I've determined that you are the bank robber. Well, Eric, how would you know if you're wrong that John is the bank robber? Oh, well, somebody else have to go out and just, find a better suspect. Like that doesn't falsify, that doesn't confirm, it doesn't do anything. That's useless criteria. Like you are engaging the division fallacy from earlier when we were talking about the division of cells, and I asked if I had lopped off my arm, would I become less intelligent? Like the whole does not accumulate the sum of the attributes of its parts. Like that's the fallacy Matt's talking about there. And then later on, you're saying, well, I'm going to hold this position until somebody comes by and gives me a better position to hold or dethrones it. That's also fallacious thinking. Like, and if you want us to take you seriously, John, you're going to have to eliminate these out of your process and come up with better explanations for these things.
I mean, Eric dug in better than I was ever going to in getting you to identify certain things. Hey, it's just cells. What about my arm? What about all this? Served it up on a silver platter. And here's the difference, John. There were other callers today. For example, Diana. Diana was unable to make a case for the thing that he believed. It's a frustrating bit of circumstance to be in that position. But the truth is, neither were you. The only difference is that you seem to be convinced you have a much better understanding of this, and you do probably have a better understanding than he does about biology or other things, but you've been reading the scientists, but you're not one, and you haven't done the work, and you don't seem to know at what point someone who has an expertise in some science has a relevant evidence-based position on another issue. Michael Levin isn't a geologist and may not, these people are biologists, they're neurologists, all this other stuff, but where's the expertise that demonstrates, hey, the universe is probably designed? If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say the universe is designed. It's very bizarre that even the scientists that you want to point to might only agree with you if you put a gun to their head. If you put a gun to my head, I'll tell you whatever the fuck you want. John's the smartest guy who has ever called this show. I think John's brilliant and beautiful, and he's right and I'm wrong, and I love Jesus right now. Of course I'm going to do all that with a gun to my head. The thing is, we don't have a gun to our head on that issue. You don't have to actually make up a decision. The thing that John doesn't seem to get is that it's okay and probably the right answer to say, I don't know. I'm not aware of any solution to the problem of hard solipsism. I'm not aware of any definitive position on free will and determinism. I'm not aware of any solution to the problem of induction. There's countless paradoxes, Curry's paradox and Newcomb's paradox and all these other things within logic, within epistemology, all these things. And John's just like, oh, it's so cool. And it is cool. And then the fact that you can sever a corpus callosum and wind up with two distinct people that communicate independently and think independently from what was one brain. that not only does not lead you to something that is very Christian, it absolutely demonstrates that some of the concepts within Christendom are hogwash. Because what Christianity is saying is that you're not a body, you're a soul. You are a spiritual being that is inhabiting or imbuing or puppet mastering this sack of meat. And what the science shows is that doesn't have to be the case. What the science shows is that the very notion of a spirit or soul is the single most dead concept in all of Christendom, because everything about my likes and my desires and all of that are identifiable as functions of a brain that are subject to change. Brain damaged people go through massive personality shifts. They go through massive shifts in their beliefs. They can be completely incapable of doing the things that they did before. How does any of that make sense? If I was a Christian and I get hit on the head and now I'm an atheist, which of those is the true act of my soul? Is it because my soul is no longer able to communicate through the body? Because if that's the case, then now you're talking about a body that is not acting in accordance with a soul, and yet nobody can tell. It's walking around through life, and now you have one person who is supposedly steered by a soul and one person who is not, and you have no way of telling the difference between them. Which means that you have no way of identifying which people have a soul and which don't, which means you can never identify that anybody has a soul. Every single thing, every single attribute that we've attributed to a soul, apart from being able to persist and exist outside of a body, is something that is an identifiable function of the brain. And when you sever that corpus callosum to where you have two individuals in one brain, did we just create a whole nother person? The evidence suggests that we basically created another person. So did we split a soul? Do each of them have half a soul? Did the soul just stick with one side and not the other? Did God send a new soul to inhabit the other part of that brain or to steer that part of the brain? And if one of those souls is a Christian and one of those souls is an atheist, which one gets to steer the ship? Which one's making the decisions? If the atheist one goes out and does some sinful stuff, does that baggage get sent on to the theistic soul that's in there? The math with souls doesn't make any sense. There's nothing about this discussion from the scientific standpoint that leads to something that is very Christian. It's just not. And when you engage in fallacies like the fallacy of division, the fallacy of composition, and somebody points them out, you don't get to say, I've never heard of that fallacy. I don't know what it is. I guess I'm just going to have to take your word for it after you've been told what it is and that you need to go look it up. If you don't then get to say, oh yeah, I think I'm the one that's demonstrated in this conversation that I'm acting in accordance with logic, if you're the only one that's been called out repeatedly for fallacies that have been identified, named, and described to you.
Yeah, and until you have falsification criteria for any of your claims, you're nowhere near approaching science.
On that note, we are out of calls for today. We're going to take a break. First of all, don't forget, there's a special event tonight, and Arden's got a little banner thing we can put up as a reminder, and that is that if you're a patron of the channel, there's a patron exclusive Q&A with Shannon Q tonight at 6 p.m. So in about an hour and 18 minutes, that'll be starting right back here on the line. In the meantime, you can also go to linemerch.com to get some of the new line merch stuff that's out there. There will be a number of different shows happening on the network over the next week. This has been the Sunday show. On Wednesday, I'll be back with the Hang Up. And don't forget that March 2nd, we're going to be debuting End Boss right here on this network. We'll have more details as we finalize all that stuff. Huge thank you to Eric for having infinitely more patience than I do and being demonstrably better at much of this than I was capable of being, which is why I can take a Sunday off and Eric can just host a show without me. We'll just find somebody who's more agreeable. It's all good. We got different ways of doing stuff, but also
I learned from the best. So thank you, Matt.
Anthony Magnabosco.
He's one of them, yeah.
On that note, huge thank you to Arden for producing, and she's also going to be producing this thing, so we've got to sneak out and get some food real quick before we get back for the other thing. Thanks to our call screener, Dragon, all of our, especially huge thank you to I Got Cookies, because I'm going to touch on this one last bit and wrap it up, and that is that when we have a caller who may or may not be playing around with pronouns, it's more important than ever to make sure that we are doing our best to show that we are going to respect individuals' pronouns every time. It doesn't matter what you think you hear or what your intuitions lead you to. I messed up. Other people are going to mess up. Just catch the mess up, correct it, apologize, move on. Cookies was just absolutely spamming chat with, would you guys knock it off? And all the other mods were helping out as well. But if it takes me interrupting the show to get chat to pay attention, if you're sitting there and all you're doing is waiting for what you can type in chat next without reading what's going on in chat, especially without reading what's going on from the moderators, I think you're doing it wrong, and we could probably do it better. So huge thank you to all of our mods and Arden and everybody else. Stay tuned for other things. Oh, we're getting ready to see.
There was multiple requests. This is the Barky boy that was interrupting our show today.
See?
And
that's why I have snakes, because you can't hear them barking.
Yeah.
But on that note,
all that slithering doesn't pick up on the microphone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
this has been the Sunday Show. Don't forget to tune in to all the other shows on the line. You can join patreon.com/calltheline. You can join the YouTube channel. You can hit like. You can hit subscribe. You can hit dislike if you want to. That's always fine, because even though they don't put the counter on it anymore, it's still engagement. And don't forget to watch the short. Also, people about the show. Get more people to call in, because while I am not actually going to ban John, I'm going to talk to him again another time. Maybe we can get some other callers.